Hey there, everyone. Welcome. I'm glad that you're ditching the Grammys for this because this is so much better. We are doing another 10 questions episode, and I got my friend KB here, the channel Knowing Better. First,
Hello.
yeah. Before we get started, I just wanted to make sure that everyone knows about your channel and subscribes to it. So let's see here. Nope, that's not it. That's not it. There it is. Uh, Subscribe to Knowing Better. It is one of the best channels, period, on this platform. And yeah, I think a lot of you, though, are probably already subscribed. But regardless, yeah, thanks for being here. I'm glad we got to do this. So you have caught one or two of these before. So yeah. So for those of you who are not familiar, if you're like this, the way that this stream will work, and this will later be a podcast too, by the way, we just come up with 10 questions for each other, and they're open-ended questions, so they're not yes or no questions, and we don't tell each other ahead of time, and it's just supposed to lead to hopefully a more fruitful conversation. And yeah, so we've each come up with 10 questions for each other. This will probably last a couple hours. Also, if KB is down with it, we'll, depending on how late it is, we can stick around at the end and take questions from the audience. So if you have questions, if you could please hold on to the end. I think I covered it. How are you doing today, sir?
Well, I took the month of January off, which I have never done before. Since I started the channel, it's just been nonstop go, you know.
Wow.
So yeah, well, okay, because the Indian removal and pilgrims projects just took so much work. I decided to take January just off. So I kind of got back to work a few days ago. And I just started live streaming on Twitch again. I kind of stopped that like 3 months ago because I needed to finish the Indian removal video. So yeah, I'm fresh out of my my own Twitch stream, so I'm already in the zone for this.
Yeah. Well, that's a good idea. I should probably do the same. I'm trying not to work as much this year. That's what one of my New Year's resolutions was like, don't work on the weekends at all. And I already broke that. So, and here we are on a Sunday night, but it's all right.
I stopped doing New Year's resolutions a few years ago, and I started doing CGP Gray's themes.
Oh, yes.
And so this year it's consistency. So last year I made 4 videos. This year I also want to make 4 videos, but I want to get them done ahead of time. Like
Yeah.
I'm always right up against the deadline and often have to push it back. So my goal this year is to do the same amount of work, but more evenly spread out. I don't know how you do it, but like the first week I might only work 10 hours, and then the next week it's 50 hours, and then after that's 30. It's just all over the place, and I'm trying to keep it at like 35 the entire time. So
Yeah, that's good. I remember I asked you for advice when I first went full time year and a half ago, and that was one of the things you said, like, don't work after dinner.
yeah.
That's a good rule. That's one I have been a stickler about. Like about 5:30. If it's after 5:30, it's getting dark out. I'm like, nope, I'm getting out of the basement.
Yeah. I still do that. It's really hard for me to. I mean, this is a special occasion, but I can't get back to like reading a book or anything after dinner. It's no. Kind of
Yeah.
step away from the computer entirely.
All right. Yeah. Well, we before we jump into this, just so the audience knows, like, Knowing Better and I have known each other for a while, but
Forever.
now we're going to get to know each other better. Sorry. God, that was bad. But no, like seriously, I think we found each other because our audience overlapped, and you know how the algorithms work. And like, oh, he's also a social studies creator. Oh, he used to be a teacher, just like me. And So I don't remember who reached out first, but it would have been like at least 4 or 5 years ago. And both of our channels, I remember, were very small at the time. Like,
Yeah, we were less than 10,000 maybe.
yeah. Yeah, and it was so crazy to like. It's funny because both of our channels kind of grew at the same time in different ways. You know how it goes; it's like up and down. But we've kind of been on this journey together, and it's kind of nice to have someone to kind of, you know, reach out to who's going through a very specific thing. You know, like if I go to any of the people I know, my friends or family here, they're just like their eyes glaze over, and then they're like, "What?" My parents still don't understand how I make money from this.
Yeah. I have to explain that to my dad every time I talk to him. It's bizarre. Like he's not senile, but he just doesn't seem to get it. Like how the ads work and stuff. He's like, do you have to reach out to these companies? No, it's all automatic. I don't have to do anything.
My parents are just like, why would people pay you for the stuff that you've been doing your whole life anyway? I was making videos for an audience of 0 when I was a kid. But yeah, I'll start us off.
Okay.
I think this is a good question to lead on, but don't depending on how the conversation goes, you can go out of order. You don't have to stick to the order you have.
Oh,
and
okay.
Also, for the first time, the first episode of 10 questions ever, I have these things. I have a little ticker there so we can keep track of what question we're on.
Okay.
All right. Question number 1. What motivates you to continue to make videos after all these years? What kind of keeps you going?
I mean, this is going to sound somewhat lame, but it is my livelihood now. I do need to pay rent, right? So that is probably the primary motivator. Is I do have to produce. But aside from that, I'm trying to not shift. I'm trying to add on to the stories that we all grew up learning, right? So in a sense, I'm doing this just for me, and then I make a video out of it for everyone else. So I want to know about company towns. I want to know about what happened after slavery ended, and so it's my own curiosity of wanting to fill in the gaps of what we got in our education. I don't know about you specifically, but I've taken U.S. history to 1865 half a dozen times. I've never even seen from 1865 offered. And I've always found that as kind of odd. Like, okay, slavery's ended and we all lived happily ever after. So more recently, I've been trying to kind of put the pieces together of what happened afterwards and connect it to like the stuff I do know, like World War II, Vietnam, the more recent stuff. So I'm just like, what happened, in the 1870s and 80s? Like, I know that slavery ended, and then I know that sometime after that segregation started, but I have no idea how that happened. So I start looking, and occasionally it turns into an amazing video. So that's kind of the motivation, is to just learn myself, because I feel, even though I went through the entire American education system and college, and I was a teacher, I still feel like I don't know American history, at least not in its entirety anyway, because a lot of that just was never given to me, and of course, and I didn't even know to look for it. So that's kind of where I'm at now.
Yeah, you make a good point. Like, even when assuming we're a really good student when we're in high school, we're still limited to the curriculum, which has a lot of just like superficial stuff, trying to cram it all in 1 year. And then even when you're teaching it, it's the same thing. It's like you have a curriculum that you have to teach. You have specific standards, and if you veer off too far, I mean, you're not going to get through everything that you need to. And so, actually, you brought up, you know, the period after the Civil War. Reconstruction is what it's commonly referred to. But I know I spent more time on Reconstruction than I did the Civil War. It wasn't though because I was mistaught it. It was just because, well, actually, I was mistaught it, but it was because I was more fascinated with it. So yeah, like I know as you know,
well, you also teach AP U.S. history, right? Like, or you taught?
Yeah.
See, that was never offered in the school when I was going through, and the various schools I taught at didn't have it either. So I just never encountered that.
I never had AP at my high school. I would have taken it probably, maybe, I don't know. And it's so funny too that you say that like you feel like you don't know American history that well because this is literally what you do for a living. A lot of your content is just American history, and I kind of feel the same way though because and what's kind of mind blowing is how many viewers will ask about something like something related to history of another country. And I'm just like, who do you think I am? Like, why would I know anything about the history of, you know, you name it, Italy?
I know very basic stuff about other countries.
Yeah.
Because that stuff just isn't taught to us.
And it's mostly European countries. Let's be honest. It's because we get mostly Western Civ in both high school and college. So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I have a mildly related question here. I guess to what we were talking about anyway. If you couldn't do YouTube or be a teacher anymore, what would you do?
Oh, yeah. I like that. Well, geography is actually my biggest passion. A lot of people don't know that. Like, I was the type of kid that would just stare at maps all the time, and I still do. Yeah. I'm just so
globes. I was obsessed with globes. Anyway, go on. Sorry.
Yeah. You get it. So, something related to that. You know, there's not the problem with the field of geography, though. There's not much other than teaching or GPS related. You know, like with map making. I don't know if I would like that. So like, I think that something that's related is specifically urban geography that I'm really into. Like I even have a textbook back here that's an urban. Yeah, let me dig that thing out. This is one of my favorite textbooks of all time. It's called Interpreting the City and Urban Geography. And like, seriously, I would be probably a city planner, you know, because I was also a SimCity kid. I played SimCity religiously. And some of my favorite YouTube channels are especially the, what is it called? Neo-urbanism. What is it? You know, like City Beautiful. And
I mean, I've just heard it called urbanism. I don't think I've heard any other term.
Yeah, I love pretty much any urbanism channel. I'll watch it.
Not Just Bikes. It's a favorite of mine, must say.
Yeah. Shout out. So yeah, what about you?
City planner. What would I do?
Yeah.
See, that's tough. Because I guess I really haven't put much thought into it. People have asked me if YouTube fell through, would you go back to teaching? And the answer is no. I just wouldn't. It's very toxic right now to be a teacher, especially a history teacher. So I couldn't imagine myself going back to that. So if I couldn't teach and I couldn't do YouTube, I think I would just do something manual. I worked in a lumber mill when I was in college, and it was my favorite job ever because you just show up, you do the work, you get dirty, and you go home. You don't take the work with you like teaching. It's constant. YouTube also is constant. So yeah, having a job where it's just like done and I leave, that would be awesome. I think. No customers to deal with either. I mean, it was just great. So
actually, I was a groundskeeper for a couple summers. I didn't mind that either. Like there's something, it's hard work, but at the same time, you're really busy all the time, and time does kind of fly because you're just constant. And plus, you can sometimes listen to podcasts or something, you know, when you're doing the tedious stuff. But
I didn't have that option back then. Like podcasts just weren't a thing, you know.
I'll never
I could
forget. I
listen
had
to the radio.
yeah. I had a data entry job for like 2 months after college because I couldn't find like a real job after it was a low point in my life. But I remember listening to my Discman. I brought in like my whole big book of, and it was such a like that's what got me through. Arcade Fire got me through that job. I've listened to the CDs over and over. Anyway, sorry, tangent. Okay, so yeah, this is going pretty well with the ticker there. All right, my second question. I think you're going to like this question, but at the same time, it's going to frustrate you. So, if viewers out there watching right now, if you don't know, knowing better gets pretty deep with the research, like goes down lots of rabbit holes. My understanding, I think you've told me this before, like you write out all your notes, like
Yes.
like as if it was a college course, like a lecture.
Yep. By hand.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I don't really do that. Yeah. But you'll read. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. I write them all out.
Highlight and everything.
Yeah. Different colors. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, anyway, what was your question? I don't want to just like start doing stuff.
Well, your research is very thorough. You read multiple books. Like I'm impressed if I can read one book for a video. And even then I don't read the whole book, you know, admittedly. So with you though, it's different. And that's why you have such epic videos. Something like the Indian removal video was it 2 hours?
2.5 hours. Yeah.
2.5 hours. Wow. That's insane. But I watched the whole thing. It was good. So that all said, my question is, how do you know when a video is the appropriate length? Like, how do you know when to stop with it?
So I guess I don't think about the length in terms of time. But when I'm doing the research, when I start running across the same information over and over, that's when I sort of realize, okay, I don't need to read another book or anything. Like I might have a list of 6 books and only get through 3 of them because I filled in all of the gaps, sort of. And then it just comes down to telling the story that I want to tell. So the Pilgrims video, for example, I read books about the Puritans in Boston, you know, like the Winthrop fleet. I read about the Pilgrims, the Mayflower people, and I read another one. What was the third one? It doesn't matter. Anyway, I read 3 books, and I realized I want this video to be about the Pilgrims, so I just kind of left out most of the Puritan stuff. So I did all that research for essentially nothing in the end. But it helped me it helped me connect the story, you know, throughout, because that's the end of the Pilgrims is when the Puritans show up, and that sort of stuff. So I tell the story I want to tell, and if it's 50 minutes, okay. If it's 2 hours, okay. But you know, people have told me or asked for me to break these videos up into parts. I don't know what your stance is on parts, but my personal view is that they're terrible.
I agree.
Breaking your video up into parts is just it's an awful idea. Because take the Indian removal video, for example. If I had only talked about Jamestown and made that its own video, and I only talked about Trail of Tears and that was its own video, and Wounded Knee, you know, people would watch one of them and be like, okay, without connecting it to the wider story. So in that case, I was like, no, I have to tell from start to finish in one go, because if I was just a Trail of Tears video, people will watch that and be like, oh yeah, that's terrible, but you know, in the end it worked out or whatever. Like they won't connect it to the other stuff. I had done parts videos early on, like in my first year or two, and even though there's part 1 and part 2, people would always comment, "You forgot about this," even though it's in part 2, right? It became really clear that people don't watch both parts. Um, so now I tell the story that I want to tell. I try to do it as short as I can. I feel like I know you're laughing, but what I feel like I cram too much information into a very small space. Like it's just this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened. And I would like to sort of get away from doing that and be a little more narrative with it. But still, in the end, I don't approach a topic with a time length in mind. I just say, I want to make a video about this. So then I do all the research I need to, and I write my script about that. And like I said, if it comes out to be 50 minutes or 2 hours, then that's what it ends up being. I mean, sometimes I guess I know ahead of time that it's going to be a longer one. Indian removal, I knew was going to be a huge one.
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, I guess I do sort of aim for an hour. But you know, they're all over the place. So,
well, I think in your early days, obviously, and mine too, we made shorter videos almost out of necessity because we had other jobs and we didn't have the free time.
yeah.
And so I think the topics, you've just chosen more broad and expansive topics as your channel's gotten bigger.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm starting to do that too, but at the same time, you know, I get bored with topics, and so I think, yeah, like the only exception was my Oregon Trail video, which was almost 2 hours long, but the thing is, because I don't normally release longer videos like that, my audience is trained to, like, repulse, you know, when they see the time. Sometimes I wish the time thing wasn't on the thumbnail, you know, because
My audience is the opposite.
well, yeah, because you've kinda, that's your thing now.
Yeah. So you know, I made the 2.5 hour long Indian removal video, but then I made a bunch of spin-offs that I didn't think really fit in. So like the War to Save the Buffalo and Geronimo were 2 spin-offs that nobody watched because they saw it, they saw the time length, and they assumed that I had just cut pieces out of the main video.
Yeah, you
And
didn't.
like,
Yeah.
I know, it's all new content, but so many creators do stuff like that they're just trained to sort of see it that way. Like nobody, they said that about my shorts too. They thought those were just pieces of the main video
We should
and
just
not
do that then. If people already assume it, we should just do that because the shorts do some of them do pretty well. I don't know if you've had
occasionally.
have
I've
you
had a
had what?
few, yeah.
Okay.
But some of them have been, you know, flops, and I'm like, well, it was only a minute anyway,
They're
so
so
it's not a
weird.
big deal.
They have a long tail though, I noticed, like, I think but yeah, if you're a YouTuber, make shorts. That they're, really promoting those right now, I found out from inside sources. Okay.
It's my turn, right?
Oh, yes, yes.
Um, uh, okay. What video? Okay, this is a 2-part question.
Okay.
What video did your audience like the most, but you hated? And conversely, what video did you like the most, but your audience hated?
I'll start with the second part because that's fresh in my mind. Yeah, the Oregon Trail video is, as far as I'm concerned, my magnum opus. It was like I was most proud of it. I was trying to pitch it to this history streaming service, and they ultimately didn't give me a very good offer. So I was like, screw it, I'll just release it on my own. But yeah, like I took the whole family on a road trip and filmed the whole thing. My daughters helped film it. Child labor, before you say anything, I paid them. Mrs. Beat, she is, you know, essentially a pilot, a drone pilot now. She helped me. She got a drone. Yeah, like it was a family affair, and we rented a Tesla. First time I ever drove one. And anyway, that was the 2 hour epic video, and it bombed. It tanked. It was. I think it hasn't even broken 100,000 views as of right now.
Oh, really?
So yeah, it was a big disappointment, and I should have known better because it was. you know, I'm known as the political history guy, the president's guy at this point. And so if I go out of that, I'm always taking a huge risk. And so westward expansion is something I'm really like. I had forgotten that you made a video about the Oregon Trail.
Yeah.
I went to the Guernsey Ruts where you were in your video, which
Yep.
everyone watched his video as well. But anyway, yeah, I had so much fun making it, though. It was still kind of worth it. Now, as far as the first part question, that's a little bit more difficult. Like, I would say, like, my biggest videos lately have been the president ones. And there's one video.
You've been doing president videos forever. So what do you mean by?
Well, I mean, like the ones where I go through all of them.
Oh, okay. I see what you mean. All right. All right.
Yeah, like, and they there's I know this is kind of you could relate to this maybe, I don't know, but I'm really hard on myself when it comes to my appearance. Like
Yes.
yeah, I've struggled. Like I have adult acne, and I actually finally got medication to try to like fix that. And I was motivated because so many people talk about, oh, your face is oily or whatever. You got, and there's one video that I have. I'm not going to say which one it was, but it's one of my president ones, and it's one of my most popular ones. That I don't look good. I'm like embarrassed by how I look, and also we've talked about this too. Like my Achilles heel, is that what they call it? Has always been lighting. Like because I film in my basement, there's no windows in here. It's always like you don't have windows in there either, though, in your room, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So, but you've mastered it, and I've learned a lot from you and the way you do. But I've always struggled with lighting, and the lighting in that video was horrible as well.
I mean, you look at my older videos, and it's just terrible. It's they're reflecting off the background. It was awful in the beginning anyway.
Yeah, well, don't look at my old videos from 2011. Okay, so yeah.
So you don't like it because of your appearance, not because of like the content, or you felt it was a lazy video?
I think most of my early content is lazy in general. Like, I mean, seriously, like you actually called me out in one of them because I made a video. Yeah, it was the Japanese internment video, and you actually
I don't remember this.
Yeah, you were so professional about it. You reached out like, "Hey, just so you know, I'm just gonna like dissect one of your videos, please."
Oh, okay, I know.
Okay.
that video no longer exists, by the way. I felt like, I was like, it's so petty that I'm like picking on. I mean, at the time, YouTubers that were the same size as me, but I was like, this is just. I didn't like that video because it was so like scattershot, and I was, picking on you, picking on reading through history. I was like, I don't like, back in 2016 or whatever, when I made that video and like petty responses were kind of the in thing. It felt different, but now in hindsight, I'm like, I didn't like it, so I took it down. Like,
oh, I didn't even know that.
I don't know, maybe a year ago.
Oh, wow. Well, but that's the thing. Like I literally, my early videos and even like, I mean, some of my more recent ones are so dependent on what I taught in the classroom, just it's purely curriculum based, and so like, I'm not going to go that deep. A lot of my videos are just straight up introductions. And as long as I think the viewer knows that, I think we're okay. But, that's the problem, though, is like one of my biggest problems with all my stuff is I'm always like running the risk of oversimplifying, especially when you're trying to cram it in 10 minutes. So,
yeah.
But
a lot of my half of my videos from the first year are unlisted, and that's because I just finished teaching, and I was a teacher, then I went to college, and then I started the channel. But that first year, all I did was take my old lesson plans and turn them into videos.
Yeah.
And now in hindsight, I'm like, oh my God, like it's so oversimplified. I'm leaving out like really crucial details, like stuff that I know now years later, right?
Yeah.
But at the time I was like, yeah, this is a great video about the Cold War or whatever. Mm-hmm. And it's just looking back, I'm like, all I really did was list, like, the Korean War happened, then the Vietnam War happened. Like, it was just like a bullet point list. And looking
But
back,
that's
I was like,
okay.
oh, it's so.
You're too hard on yourself.
Well, YouTube was a different landscape back then, in 2016, 2017, where like 15, 20 minutes was considered long.
Mhm.
Whereas now an hour is kind of normalized.
Well,
So
you also inspired me to finally like react to other videos in my own videos when I was teaching this stuff, like PragerU, for example.
yeah.
I was scared to do that in the beginning, and you kind of like, oh, he does it pretty well. I can do it like that. And then I recently did Johnny Harris, and like I was trying to be nice to him though, because it's literally the same thing I just said I did, which is oversimplify. And so I think that's the thing. I think there's a big value in uh, just correcting folks in good faith, like saying, hey, I want to add some more context. And so that's why I like channels like, by the way, one of them's in the chat. They reacted to some of your stuff too, like vlogging through history. Mr. Terry was in the chat. Shout out to Mr. Terry. Like they add so much. Like they're not your typical reaction channels. They are history teachers who know their stuff, who, make me feel a lot better about releasing a 10-minute video. Okay, we'll move on here to the third question.
I will say though that I've shifted away from responding to other creators, and now I well, you try to punch up, right?
Right.
So I only go after like PragerU or Ben Shapiro, people who are just bigger than me, who are like more mainstream, rather than some YouTuber who I watched and I was irritated by and nobody else knows. Like, it's just, that stuff seems petty, right? So
Uh,
I try to aim it at more mainstream stuff rather than
yeah. Well, and when we say punch up, it's mostly punching up against like millions of dollars in marketing, right?
yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah,
Prager,
exactly.
they have so much money, it's crazy.
Yeah,
Anyway,
well,
okay.
I'm sure you've gotten this comment though, like, why react to PragerU? That's such low hanging fruit. Have
Yeah.
you heard that? Yeah,
You and
and
I have discussed this before.
yeah, yeah, it is low hanging fruit, but that low hanging fruit reaches millions of people a week. Like,
Yep.
that stuff gets views. That's why we still respond to that stuff. So
Yeah, it's one of those things we just kind of plug our nose and do. Because we kind of have to.
yeah,
Okay, so this question is a little bit of a wild card, but you have had uh, ferrets as pets, and a lot of people don't know probably that unless they stick around at the end of your videos that you have had ferrets, and
yeah.
I'm fascinated by ferrets. I never had one as a pet. I think I would be willing to try it maybe one day, but I'm still a little nervous. So, what's the what are the biggest misconceptions about ferrets?
They don't stink. That's the biggest one. They don't stink. I'm so tired of hearing that one.
What about
um,
biting though? I heard that they're more rascally than cats are even.
that they are when they're young, but you can train them out of it.
Okay.
Like, all of my ferrets have been trained out of it. I say all. I have two currently, Atlas and Peabody, but I've had four throughout my adult life. Um, yeah, so yeah, unless you go to like some random breeder out in the sticks, most any ferret that you would buy, it comes descented, so the scent glands are removed at the same time they do the neutering or the spaying.
Okay.
It's kind of the same process. So they don't stink any more than a dog or a cat. And honestly, I would say they stink less. I've had people, I've had maintenance people come over to fix the heater or the stove. And when they finally see the cage in some corner, they're like, oh, wow, I couldn't tell that you had pets, because
Mhm.
they just don't smell. Um, they're kind of like if you took a dog's personality and put it in a cat's body.
Oh, somebody
They're,
did that. said that in the chat actually.
Oh, I've been using that line for years, so I didn't steal it. They like to wrestle around. They don't really play fetch, but they do like tug, and they will chase after something if you throw it. Um, they're just fun. They're like dogs, but they are in a little cat-sized body, like a mini cat. Um, they they're the perfect pet for me. These two are, well, Wheatley, which was the previous one, and Atlas and Peabody are emotional support animals. Ferrets are actually extremely common emotional support animals, especially for veterans, because, I mean, while dogs are great, they do tend to randomly make loud noises. So ferrets don't really make noise, aside from, when they're moving around and they bump stuff, but they don't bark or meow or anything like that. They sleep 22 hours a day. So they're like the perfect part-time pet. I let them out for an hour in the morning and an hour at night. And when I say let them out, I mean out of the cage to run around the house. I think there's even their favorite thing to do is just move their piles of stuffed animals around. Like one day they'll all one day they will all be behind the TV. The next they're all under my futon. Like it's like they wake up and they decide, okay, we're moving everything over there, and then that's their task. So yeah, they really they're not. Well, I guess they can get up to mischief, just like any pet will if they're unsupervised.
Oh, my cat tonight actually jumped on the food and stole food from my daughter. I chased it down, like, he was running around the house with food in his mouth.
So that's another thing, like the ferrets imprint on their food. So I introduced the various kibbles I will be using. I use a mix now, because, well, with Wheatley, I used to use only one, and if that company goes out of business and you have to switch, they're not going to like it because they're imprinted on that original food. So anyway, these two are imprinted on a mix of kibbles, so they don't even like human food. I've offered them everything under the sun: turkey, chicken, bacon. Not interested. They only want their food. So that's a nice. I mean, I guess occasionally, they'll find a Skittle on the floor and they'll lick all the color off of it for some reason and leave the Skittle, a white Skittle. But that's, that happens.
Fascinating creatures. And you mentioned the smell thing. I'm just like, okay, come on. Human beings smell a lot worse than.
Yeah. I would say I smell worse than they do. Of course, if you don't clean their cage, it's going to stink. But they're litter box trained. So yeah. I mean, occasionally they can't make it. But even then, my ferrets seem to know, like, that's the bathroom. That's where he does it. So if I can't make it to the litter box, I'll do it in there. They don't do it on the carpet. They do it on the nice tile floor where it's easy to clean up.
Fascinating. Yeah. Yeah, like our dog, if she has an accident, it's always on the tile floor in the kitchen. And
yeah,
I think she was trained early because that's where she was when she was a puppy. Yeah, they're smart animals. We need to give them more credit. Cool.
Okay. Should the Kansas City Chiefs change their name?
Oh, wow. I was hoping that you'd ask this actually. Yeah, so yeah, I'm a big Chiefs fan. They're going to the Super Bowl, which is exciting. I've been a Chiefs fan since I was like 8. So I am actually very conflicted about even watching football anymore because of all the brain damage.
Me too.
Yeah, like I can't stop, but I'm definitely not as big a fan as I used to be. I would be perfectly fine with them changing the name. I think it ultimately comes down to the local Native American population primarily. There's like the Potawatomi. There's a reservation near Kansas City. And other reservations like if they all like collectively said, "Hey, this is offensive," it's kind of like the statue thing. Like the people that live there should probably, if they're not comfortable with it, just take it down. The thing about the Chiefs name as opposed to the Washington Redskins was the former name of the Commanders now. I think Redskins is clearly more offensive than Chiefs, so I
I
think
would
it's a
say,
little bit
yeah.
more nuanced. Yeah, like Chiefs also so where I used to teach high school was Tonganoxie Chieftains. And the Chieftains, actually, the mascot, well, it's not named after the Chiefs. It's named after a local chief that actually helped start the town. He was one of the founding members of the town, and he helped the first European settlers. And so it was to honor him. And so I think, I would be less, I would have to explain that to people like, hey, this is actually a different situation. It's complicated. So would you think that it's pretty tasteless, the name Chiefs, or like, what's your opinion on
that? So I do. I do think it is a bit tasteless, because we don't have mascots for other races in generally anyway, or
Except for
other
the Fighting Irish.
yeah, the Irish, yes.
Oh.
But
Well, that was they were racism towards the Irish too, big time.
Yes, there definitely was. But I would say now that they've sort of reclaimed that and they kind of take some pride in it, I can't blanket say that for every Irish person, of course. But I feel like since American Indians are still oppressed, they still are. There's just no denying that.
Yeah.
Since they still are, it feels more tasteless to continue that. I don't get the sentimentality of, like, they've been named that forever though, because teams move cities, they change names all the time. And while some people might kind of be bummed out about it, there's no national outrage when it happens. So there might be some griping in the beginning, but ultimately I think any place with Native American mascots should very seriously consider changing them. Now, you mentioned one that makes more sense in a local context, but you also said that the Kansas City Chiefs should change their name if the local people want it to be, and I disagree with that, because it's the National Football League and they travel around the country. So you may not, you may be in New York, or I don't know if that's the same league or whatever. You may be in New York and you're now forced to sort of endure this mascot. NFL is obviously optional, right? But I'm thinking more of high schools and colleges where you have no say. You might be at a school that's, the Marlins or whatever, but the fact that you have to play against the Redmen next week, you can't. There's nothing you can do about it except just grin and bear it. And I don't think that's good. Even if the people in that town are okay with being called the Redmen,
I don't think the local Native American population in that town would be okay with that. I know what you're saying.
The example that I used in my Indian removal video, the Marquette Redmen, they were originally called the Redmen because they wore red sweaters. That was it. And then around the 1920s or 30s, they decided to make it an Indian, and it's been that ever since. So it came from a neutral place, and then they just decided to make it racist.
Just like all those statues during the Jim Crow era, late 1800s, early 1900s. Yeah, like just to show, like, yeah, what are you going to do about it?
Yeah, exactly. So, and it's different than statues also, since a statue is really only something that's seen locally. It's not sort of in your face wherever you live. So yeah, I think they should change their name to something more appropriate for the area, whatever they want to name it. But I think the Chiefs, the Braves, they all need to seriously reconsider that stuff. Just as it after the civil rights movement, and I guess still to this day, there are a number of actual locations, cities, mountains that use the N-word just fine. Like they just use it as if it's a normal word. And nowadays everyone would look at that and be like, yeah, you need to change that. And I feel like we're just about to go over the roller coaster or whatever when it comes to American Indians. Like we're starting to recognize that these things are harmful. And I think in 10 or 20 years you won't see it anymore in the same way that the black stuff, the African American stuff happened.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. Interesting.
But I'm also with you about football in general. I have a real hard time just sort of watching it in general. I guess we're going off on I guess I'm about to go off on a bit of a tangent here, but I went on a stadium tour a few months back, just because I was in the area and I didn't have anything to do. And when they were describing just how much effort they put into the field, like making sure the grass is perfectly green and the paint lines are, I was like, if you put half this effort into cancer or infrastructure or any of that other stuff, I'm like, but we're doing it for football, really?
Yeah.
Like, I just they're just spending millions.
Like the Grammys tonight happening right now, like people care so much about stuff like that, these award shows, and I'm just like, why can't you just care about stuff that matters?
Yes.
Like,
I feel the same way, but I do think that there is a place for music, movies, leisure activities, that kind of stuff. It's totally fine. Yeah, Star Wars, if you want to be into that, it's totally fine. But it is like we're spending like, okay, I live in an area where snow falls, so the whole field is heated to make sure. And I'm like, they said like that it costs like $25 million to put that in, and I'm like, how many like homeless shelters and apartment complexes and stuff could we have built instead of making sure that the field doesn't have snow on it? Like, it's just, it's obnoxious to me.
I get kind of feisty on Twitter, as you probably know, and I tweeted out that Elon Musk, he bought Twitter for $44 billion. And I did just a quick math. There's this company that he supports called Boxable that has $50,000 houses that are mass produced. And he could buy enough for every homeless person experiencing homelessness in the United States. That's an issue I'm really passionate about, like homelessness. I think everybody deserves to have shelter. But the pushback I got for that comment, like, well, do they work? Like, what the heck? They have to work to have shelter. What kind of twisted logic is that? I don't know. Anyway, that's my own tangent.
I think a lot of people don't realize how difficult it is to get started once you're homeless. Try applying for a job when you don't have an address or a phone number. You can't. Try applying for an apartment when you have no references for the last 5 years or whatever. Once you have like hit that bottom, we've made it almost impossible to get back out. It is very frustrating, but also at the same time, we already right now have enough empty houses to fit every person experiencing homelessness. And we just don't do it. Every day we wake up, we have all these empty homes, and we just don't do anything with them. We just let them accrue value or whatever.
Now, this is the stuff we should be angry about.
Yes.
Anyway, before I get too angry, let's move on. Okay, so now we're getting, next two questions are education related, but since you used to teach in the classroom, as did I. So if you could build a perfect school, what would it look like? like a high school.
You mean like physically or like curriculum wise? Like
Both. I mean, if you can be brief about it, like.
I mean, I'm fine with the way most schools are physically built and set up. um, I don't even have a problem with the 30. I mean, 30 is a bit much. The 20 to 25 students per class, that's fine too. Um, I think the biggest thing I would do is ban parental involvement. Just like nope, you don't. um, I mean, I have a question related to this for you, but which I'll probably ask next. But I think I don't I don't believe that parents always know best. No parent is nobody anywhere is certified to teach every subject at every level. Um, so when parents think that they know more or could homeschool's a different. Don't even get me started. But when they think, well, that wasn't the way I was taught. Why are you trying to indoctrinate? And it's like, no, you were the one indoctrinated. That's like you were the one uh, fed the story, the standard myth that I keep talking about. And so I would say parents have no say in the curriculum. We would, I would love to say that we're going to teach real American history, but as you well know, at certain ages they just can't grasp some of these concepts. High school can get most of it, but even then they kind of lack the real world experience to know that, or rather to understand that the law is not applied equally. It may be illegal for everyone, but not everyone gets the same punishment. Not everyone is pursued for it at the same intensity, that kind of stuff. And that's really not something you get until you've sort of seen it play out, which most high schoolers, I would say, have not. So, I mean, I would obviously change like the Pilgrim story and some of the other stories that we tell to be more accurate to real life, which would probably make parents not happy because everyone wants the fairy tale Mayflower story when I mean, that's almost entirely made up out of whole cloth. It's
Yeah.
Aside from the dates and the names, but the actual events are almost always oversimplified to the point of fabrication. So I would actually put much more of an emphasis on social studies. As you well know, social studies has always been the black sheep of the core classes. Um, we used to make fun of PE and art and music, but now it's really kind of us that get the short end, I would say. I would put more emphasis on that than like English, if I'm honest. Your ability to read Huckleberry Finn or To Kill a Mockingbird, after a while, I don't know about your experience, but after enough English classes, I sort of realized that this is just book report class. And so I would really de-emphasize English, possibly even some STEM. I think we overemphasize STEM. Not everyone is going to be an astronaut or engineer, but everyone is going to be a voter.
Yes.
So,
There you go.
so I think,
yeah.
I just came up with that, if believe it or not.
I'm a little biased, but yeah.
But yeah, like I feel like we don't teach, how politics actually works, how the government actually works. We teach how it's supposed to work, according to the Constitution and our textbook. But I don't think we do social studies enough justice as it is. So I would definitely put much more emphasis on that.
Yeah, because I think at its core, it's about uh, spreading empathy. I say it so many times, people get sick of me saying it. But also, though, I think you focused a lot on that. What are your opinions on grades? Do you think
I'm fine
grades
with
are
them.
okay?
Yeah.
I'm actually.
Here's a hot take. I'm also fine with standardized tests.
I mean, as long as there's good tests, like the AP tests are actually pretty solid, I would say.
Okay, so I don't know if that's necessarily a standardized test.
Oh,
It's more of a like final a final test or whatever for the class, right? When you,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I mean, we do need a measuring stick to measure student progress and yes, also compare to other people in your age group or your grade level. You
Yeah.
know, we need to see, are you falling behind? Are you ahead? Blah blah. And that kind of standardized test, I am absolutely all for. I think those are fine. What I don't like are like the high stakes ones. The SAT and the ACT are biased. They're super biased. Um, and I didn't know that until very recently as well. The origin of these tests. It all stems from the IQ tests from World War One, not IQ, but the what eventually became IQ tests from World War
Yeah.
One and eugenics. And you look at those early tests, and the questions are not at all intelligence. It's who's the pitcher for the Brooklyn Dodgers? What does Hercules powder manufacture? Where
Mhm.
is this factory located? It's all just like really weird questions, but these are the questions that determined what your job was going to be in the military somehow. Um, and that test has changed very little over the years. You'll look at the questions and you'll be like, this isn't a question about what movie this actress was in. It's a question about reading comprehension. But the question is, so and so is sailing on a yacht and tripped over the jib line. If you don't know what those things are because you're not a well-off person, it might as well be, what movie did this actress play in?
Yeah.
It's um, so it, when it comes to those tests, I am not a fan. Um, we do need some sort of college entrance test, but the SAT and the ACT are not those, because they're not knowledge tests. They are, dang it, I just had the word. They are predictive tests.
Oh,
They take your score and they predict how well they think you will do in college. It's not you answered 99 out of 100 questions correctly. It's, well, this question is much more applicable to college than that question. And no, you don't get to know how we rate these things. It's just, those tests need to be reworked top to bottom. But when it comes to like every third grader, fifth grader, and seventh grader has to take these tests in May, I'm totally fine with those. I think those are necessary.
I think that's fine too, as long as they're standards based and like
Yeah.
it's very clear what the standards are, and yeah, you have to track where they're at and compare.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Also, though, I am generally against grades. Grading, I think, is one
Okay.
of the, but I think it's mostly because of the flaw, as you know, of the A, B, C, D, and F that we have here in the United States. That
Yeah.
system is very flawed because what happens is that most teachers end up inflating grades because otherwise
Yes.
those parents will be right.
A is the starting point,
Yep.
and if you lose from there, it's not like C is the starting point.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And also, I'm a big fan of PBL, project based learning, and student centered learning, and like basically students like creating projects of some sort that revolve around their interests versus just like. And I know that kind of leads to my next question, so I don't want to say too much, but more
Okay.
skills based. But then they can also learn stuff along the way. then also one of the biggest things that I'm sure you'll agree with is schools need to start later. The research is overwhelming. There's no reason why a kid needs to get up at 6 in the morning, go to school at 7:30. They should be going in at 9 o'clock at the earliest, because teenagers are supposed to be sleeping in. But yeah, stuff like that.
I would agree with that.
Spread
I
the
might
word.
even say that I might even say that the school day needs to be longer, but that's probably a less attractive opinion.
Maybe if that was maybe a 4-day a week with a longer day, I'd be a fan.
Yeah, see, I would be all about that. Yeah. If we could do,
nice.
I mean, my lumber mill job was 4 10-hour shifts, and then I was off for 3 days. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. All right, well,
yeah.
we'll start a school someday.
Okay, here's my very related question. How do we fix the toxic education environment regarding CRT, LGBT, and historically evolution and sex ed? The things that sort of the conservative parents have gotten so angry about, that, a lot of teachers are just sort of afraid to talk about these things.
Yeah, it's funny how they're angry about that. Well, they're angry about it because certain
they've been told to. Yeah,
conservative pundits told them to be angry about it, instead of getting angry about homelessness or people can't afford their medical bills. So yeah, like, this is an unfortunate reality. It's gotten really bad the last really 3 or 4 years, as you know.
Yeah.
So when I taught almost every social studies class, I had an exercise where we did like the first week of school when we were kind of getting to know each other, where we talked about what privilege meant. And I feel like now I wouldn't even be able to do that without a parent freaking out. Yeah, 'cause like, and so we literally had this exercise like where you think about, okay, it's like kind of like a game where I always use the analogy of the starting line of the thinking about life as a race, and you're trying to, and the finish line is happiness, like whatever that means to different people. But anyway, like, just kind of explaining to the students that, hey, not everybody starts at the starting line, and here's why. And and that's where the conversation about privilege is taken into account. And I struggled with this more when I was teaching in a wealthier school district. When I used to teach at a school where the students drove nicer cars than I did. And so that was, honestly, I didn't like that so much. But the last school I was at was it's kind of suburban, but more rural. And actually the kids were much more open-minded about it. And I found success. And, I think the main thing is that if we don't use certain words, we'll be fine. Like, if you're a teacher watching this right now, you're a social studies teacher, you don't have to use critical race theory. It's meaningless anyway. By the way, check out Carlos Maz's video about it. Have you seen it? About critical race? Yeah.
Yeah, multiple times.
Yeah, it's so good. So because these weaponized terms and phrases are used, you just have to basically just avoid certain words, unfortunately. But you can still, I mean, again, the goal is like trying to raise awareness about things they hadn't thought of before. And that, I guess, like, critical race theory, I think, is mostly about, like, it's part of a larger thing that's really like intersectionality is what I call it. Like, where it's like, okay, these things that seem like they're isolated, they're actually all connected, and here's how. It's very benign. It's very boring, actually, when you really look at it. So you have to actually make the kids excited about it. Like, our kids are not going to be indoctrinated because they're going to be asleep, right? But yeah, like, you just have to make it relatable to them. And so even like you have to know your kids. You have to know your students, like, because that's one of the best parts about a public school is that it forces kids in the same classroom that wouldn't normally hang out. Especially with the class divide, which I see that, most dramatic. I used to see it most dramatically, and everything is linked to class, in my opinion. Like, you could get there that way. And so that's a good way to kind of, because everybody can relate to it. Nobody feels attacked except for maybe the person who's,
the rich kid.
Yeah. Like, usually that's only one kid. so Anyway, did I answer your question? I feel like I didn't answer it very well.
Well, how would you stop like the angry school boards?
Oh,
How would you make social studies teachers feel safe to talk about stuff that's actually true? That kind of.
I think it starts with there's a lot of school board members who shouldn't be in there, and I think school boards should be made up of former educators. Frankly, like
Yeah, the fact that they're elected is.
yeah,
Yeah.
they should change it everywhere. It should be former educators. And like you said earlier, your point was so spot on. And I know it's kind of a harsh, kind of sounds a little blunt, like, you know, parents stay out of it. But it's the same reason why, like, we don't go to the auto shop and we're not sitting there like telling them how to fix our car. We don't know how to. So like, just respect the experts. And there's like people have this twisted idea of like teachers, like we don't go in it to like we don't have this nefarious plan to indoctrinate kids. Like we just love teaching. And like, so I think in order to support social studies teachers, like it starts with the school boards. And because in the superintendent, remember, superintendents are hired by school boards. So even just saying, oh, we need to have a superintendent and the right principles and all this stuff. No, it starts with the school boards. So if you want reform in your own town, and you're a social studies teacher and you don't want to get these crazy parents that are like, they're burning books and stuff. Yeah, get involved with the school or run for school board. That's another option if they won't run to school board. And then once you're on the school board, make it so that there has to be requirements to get on the school board.
You mentioned something earlier that I just sort of wanted to touch on. I guess now that I'm thinking about it, it's a bit of a humble brag. But you mentioned having to teach stuff without using certain words, like critical race theory or genocide and that kind of stuff. I got a lot of comments on my Indian removal video, like, why didn't you call it what it is? Why didn't you use the word genocide? And that was a very intentional choice, because I know if I were to say genocide, half the people are going to disengage immediately because they're just going to like, oh, great, here we go, another genocide that white people should feel guilty about. So I just left that word out. And I still described all of the events, the tens of thousands who died, the hundreds of thousands eventually, and all that kind of stuff, without saying the word genocide. My neo-slavery video is, it's about systemic racism and CRT in a sense, but I never use those words.
Yep.
Because I know if I do, people are going to click away. So I tell the story without mentioning any of that, in the hopes that, you know, maybe a year from now, they'll look up, okay, what is systemic racism? They look at it and they'll be like, oh, I already know this stuff. I remember it from a video forever ago. Like, oh, I just need to connect the word to the definition. Whereas, you know, right now it might be just a scary word that oh, it's Marxist or something, and
triggering.
So yeah, so I've very intentionally, like you just said, not used specific words because I know there will be a reaction to it. It happens on YouTube still, you know. So
also,
yeah.
another benefit of not using those words is you're not as in danger of being demonetized.
Yes, that too.
Bonus.
Yes, I have sort of learned how to dodge that. So I haven't had a video demonetized in years.
Wow. Good for you.
I just
I need to
I do
do
get copyright claims though. I mean, that's probably the biggest thing I deal with. But demonetized, no.
Yeah, no, I have at least 25, 30 videos demonetized. I just got one age restricted and I made a fuss about it. But yeah. Anyway, I won't get into that either. All right, next up, we've got another education related one. So we'll keep this. Also, if you have questions in the chat, I saw Harrison had a couple, and I'm sorry we didn't get to that. We're going to take questions at the end here. Okay, so I did catch the stream you did with Atun Shai, and you mentioned JJ, our friend JJ McCullough, who's done this with me. And the topic was learning facts versus skills.
Yeah. Okay.
And you and JJ kind of like lean more towards like, you know what? There's a lot of facts that we should memorize. Um, so I want to know like how much should we memorize? Like what should be? How do we determine the appropriate number of facts that every
Yeah.
student should learn growing up?
That's a tough one, and I don't know that there's like a quota of facts that people need to necessarily learn. But I've thought this way for a while, and when I saw JJ's video, I was just like, yes, yes. Um, this idea that we need to teach critical thinking skills. Um, what is that? What does that even mean, really? What it means is the ability to analyze facts. So if you don't have facts to analyze and to think critically about, you're just sort of nebulously critically thinking, I guess. Like I'm not even sure what that means without the context of pre-existing knowledge. Um, I did a education video a while back, and I watched a documentary about core knowledge. And she said, before we can tell you how to think, we have to give you something to think about. Again, I was just like, ding, yes, absolutely.
Mhm.
Because I think critical thinking isn't something that can really be taught. I think it's something that comes naturally after you've accumulated enough facts to be able to be like, wait, this one doesn't sound right. This one seems out of place. And then you're able to sort of decode it or think critically about it. But if you don't have that sort of base, it is difficult. Now, what should that base be? That's a difficult question.
I
I can
always bring
only.
up Bloom's taxonomy when I talk about this.
Oh, geez, I haven't seen this in forever.
Oh yeah, you know about it. Every teacher has to know about this stuff. No, I mean,
Um,
I did make a video about like how to critically think, and I did the best I could. Like this is when I made it specifically for seventh graders, and I kind of lean more towards skills, but I get you and JJ's perspective totally because it's the same reason why I used to have my students take vocab quizzes where they had to memorize certain terms before the unit even started, because if you can't speak the language, how can we even talk? Type of deal,
yeah, yeah,
you
yeah,
know.
yeah.
And so I get like so that if you don't know what Bloom's taxonomy is, this is really dorky right now, but up on the screen, I just put it for the folks that don't know. Like at the bottom two of that pyramid are essentially that's the knowledge base where you're just kind of you're memorizing, you're first learning new things, and you're able to like uh, repeat them back to someone. I always say the critical thinking doesn't even begin to take place until the apply level, which is,
Yeah,
yeah, you take information that you learned and now you're applying it to something new, a new situation, something else,
yeah,
and analyze. You mentioned analyzing, like drawing connections. This is not something that, yeah, you can't really teach that.
yeah, yeah. How do you just teach the yellow level without teaching the stuff underneath? You
Well,
can't.
I think my only counter to that would be a good teacher should do their best to have the right questions to get them to do that. That's why like I was a huge fan of the Socratic method, like getting them in a circle and giving them the right prompts to kind of spark those little uh, what would lead to critical thinking. You're hoping it would go to critical thinking. Often it would not, but at least like you're just constantly like trying to light a fire. You know, like um, I feel like that's
Yeah, I feel like that's really internally motivated, though. I'm not sure
uh,
you can force someone to be able to draw connections among ideas. Um, it has to come from within, where they're like, "Oh yeah, that situation is a lot like this other situation I remember." And
mhm.
again, they won't be able to do that without the knowledge of those various different situations. Um,
Yeah.
so I wish there was a way to just sort of teach how to learn or how to, think critically. But I think that's just a wisdom thing, sort of.
And keeping everyone curious, I think, really is it, right? Like, there's a
Yeah, it has to
certain
be
point where most
fostered
people,
in some way. Yeah,
yeah, like there's a lot of people my age, our age. You're a little bit younger than me, but like they just don't seem like they're curious anymore. Like
exactly.
they're done learning. It's mind blowing to me. I don't know.
Yeah, a lot of people think like high school. That's all you need. That's all you
Yeah,
need to know. You don't
yeah,
need to learn anything more after that.
I'm done.
Um, I've been talking with JJ about this a little bit. Um, we're both sort of curious as to why there aren't a lot of like younger um, education creators. A lot of the new crop of creators that have come out, um, they're comedy commentary channels, they're movie criticisms. Um, they're more pop culture oriented, rather than facts, politics. It's stuff that matters, like you said before. Um, so we were both sort of trying to figure out why that is, why so many people would rather watch. No offense to H Bomber guy on this one. Why so many people would rather watch a 3.5 hour video about a video game that's okay, than a documentary about something that actually matters. Um, I mean, I watched it. I'm actually in the video, if any of you happen to catch that. But at the same time, I'm like, a 3.5 hour video about a game that you think is mediocre?
Yeah,
Like, why apply so much time to that? Why not? And again, I understand that there is a place for leisure and fun and pop culture, but it seems like much more emphasis on that. Like they finish high school, they've been given their critical thinking skills, and they apply it to why Superman is from another planet or something. Like it's just like fictitious stuff.
yeah.
Um, so it is slightly concerning for me.
Kids
Why?
these days.
Yeah. Why don't they care about stuff I care about?
There's a few younger social studies YouTubers. Like shout out to Hoser. I'm going to be collaborating with him. He's like
Oh, okay. I don't know that
high
one.
school. He's Canadian. Um,
Okay.
and there's a few others, but I noticed like they speak in memes. Everything is memes. Everything. Like it's like you know how for us like it was movie quotes maybe
Yes. Yeah.
or
Yeah.
song lyrics, but for them it's all memes. That's the language of Gen Z, and I see it with my own daughters too. Like, and I feel like that's the future of teaching history. Is just and Hoser does that well. That's why I thought of him.
Oh, okay.
He teaches.
Well, I'll have to look into him. The only like young social studies creator I can think of is Canubis, and I don't even know if he classifies as young anymore.
Oh yeah, he's still a young or they are. Sorry, they is the pronoun.
Oh, I was not aware of that. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry. I'm really bad about that. Anyway, so yeah, I think it's your turn. We're still on the fifth question. Looks like.
Well, okay. Here's a somewhat related question. Why aren't there any female history creators?
Oh, what a great question. You know, I had a conversation with somebody on a live stream. I can't remember who it was. I don't know. I think you know, I'm in a little bubble myself. Like I'm very cognizant of the fact that the only ones I've had on this 10 questions series have been white dudes. And that's because white dudes make up about 80 to 90% of like history YouTube. And anytime we like Mrs. Beat and I like stumble upon a history YouTuber who's a female, I don't want to be creepy. I'm just like, oh, I'm so excited, like type of deal. And they're just as good as us,
Yeah. Well, you and I both have like gone on missions to try and find one so that we can. I mean, I would love to amplify the voice of one if I could find one. There are political ones. There are,
yeah,
but there aren't like history.
One that's notable is that's you maybe want to think of as a history tuber is Bernadette Banner.
That's the only one I can think of, right? But she's more of like a fashion historian, it seems.
Yeah, but
yeah.
but also a little bit of culture. That's why I feel like, and that's cultural history. I think is not looked at enough on this platform. So I'm excited to see stuff like that. But yeah, as far as I think, most young men's gateway into being passionate about history is what type of history typically?
War, battle,
exactly.
yeah.
Military history. That's what first got me into it too. And when I was really little, and then, but yeah, like it's I think that's a big part of it. It tends to be most military fans are male, and then you look on YouTube, that's still the most popular subgenre of history is military history. I know, right? Because I don't have very many military history videos.
I find that stuff so boring, and I was in the military. It's so boring to me. Like, oh yeah, the guys circled around the side. Like, okay, but what was the impact of the battle? Tell me how that changed things.
Yeah. I'm only compelled to like even mention a battle if it's like a turning point or some significance that was larger than Oh well. So that's my theory. Do you have any theories on that?
I think okay. Look, I have another question.
Oh, go ahead.
That I might as well just tack on to this.
Okay. So we're doing six. We're on the sixth one then. All right.
I might have. Okay, so I think I took this part out, but I'm going to add it back in. We're both members of that YouTube history Slack. I've kind of pulled back from that recently, but it's all men, right? It's all men who care about battle history. That's really all it is. I mean, yeah, okay, but for the most part. So I feel like any female history creator who wants to get into that space will immediately find themselves being harassed by other creators, their fans, because what does a girl know about the Civil War, that kind of stuff. So I think it's the fact that it's already male dominated that keeps women out. And being a female creator is hard enough as it is. So trying to get into a space that's like the man space, it would be quite difficult. At least when it comes to military history, of course. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure why they don't do like sort of other social studies topics. The one exception is politics. There are plenty of political commentators who are women, and some of them are fantastic. Shout out to like Cat and of course ContraPoints. Mm-hmm. But they're not. Here's Reconstruction. Here's what happened. They just don't do that kind of stuff. And I think it's because of the male dominance. That's my take anyway.
Yeah. So I will say that's starting to change on other platforms, though. It started with Instagram, but really TikTok, there's a lot more female history content creators.
Oh, are there? Okay.
Yeah.
I just can't get into the TikTok.
The kids these days with the TikTok.
I know. With their Nintendos. Yeah. It's just some stuff just isn't made for me, right? So I've learned to accept that. And TikTok is one of those things. So I guess are you okay with us reversing the order here so I can ask this question? Please. So like I said, we are members of that Slack, of the history creator Slack, and I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this question differently than the way I wrote it down, because I feel like that's going to get me in trouble. The reason I've sort of pulled back from it is because of how extreme right-wing the group is overall. Like a lot of history creators are very conservative and right-wing, especially the non-American ones, it seems. So why do you think that is? And who do you think is the most harmful history creator?
Oh boy, getting saucy tonight. I love. You know that to your first point, I didn't even realize that, and maybe
Oh,
sometimes I'm not very observative, and I hadn't really thought about that because I hadn't really noticed. Maybe because I guess I'm not that in. I don't really know very many of them that well. I remember that reading through history when we used to do streams with him back in the day, way back in the day. He was pretty far to the right, and it got to a point where it was uncomfortable for me to with him because he was saying some things that were offensive to people and stuff.
okay.
But other than that, like I haven't really. But as far as I do know, there's a couple. Specifically, there's a subgenre that gets this reputation, and that's alternate history.
Yes.
Yeah, like alt history or alt history hub actually used to be more right leaning, and now I would consider him more centrist. And I think you know him too. Yeah, so
Yes.
Cody. But he's the exception. Everyone else is
Yes.
very
Very
obviously to
exception.
the
Yeah.
right. I think what if alt hist is the one that I think of immediately, who's very ideological. I've interacted with him a little bit. I'm on a good relationship with him too. I don't really watch his stuff that much, and I remember watching one specifically though, where I was like, oh my gosh, I think he's trying to like. This is what they were talking about with like indoctrination, right? Like there's like an ulterior motive here, like because like I think about this all the time because people just they think they think I have this weird plan to try to make people believe the same things that I do politically. It doesn't honestly, I don't understand it because I'm not very confident with my own beliefs. I think I question myself all the time, and I'm just like, um, and so the thing and I know it sounds cheesy when I say this. I'm always like trying to convince people what's most important to me is ever since I first learned about Santa Claus in third grade, and I took it very badly. I really care deeply about the truth. I don't like being lied to, and maybe I have issues like personally because of that, but that's always been my thing. And so that's why I tend to be very negative, like cynical and just in terms of politicians in general, power hierarchies in general, like, and so um, I have this cynicism of just like the thing that I actually am I love to learn about political history. But I always have this wave of cynicism, and I think that helps me though because it helps me be more objective. Because like I'm not like I'm not worshiping any politician. Like I have my favorite presidents or politicians and yada yada. But even then, like I can easily talk trash about them. Like Fighting Bob, he was people are like, why do you like Fighting Bob LaFollette so much? And I'm just like, oh yeah, you're right. He was an egomaniac. Anyway, I know. So do you know Fighting Bob?
I
Bob
don't. I was trying to figure out who you're talking about.
Senator from Wisconsin. He was a big part of the progressive era. You should make a video about him sometime.
Okay.
I know you don't do people though. You don't. That's related to one of my questions.
Well, okay, then I'll wait for your question.
Okay.
Okay, I think you answered mine fairly well. So
did I? Okay. Or you're just being nice.
No. I think you did.
Well, then that leads in great because I'm going to ask you that question about related to because you seem. I literally wrote this down. Actually, I wrote you seem afraid of biographies, other than maybe debunking myths like with Gandhi and Columbus. We're not going to bring up Columbus much though. If you always get lots of questions. But yeah, you generally seem afraid of biographies, and I wonder why that is. Like, if you want to explain why you avoid just like saying, "Hey, I'm going to make a video about Rosa Parks,"
Well, first of all, I think those have been done, and if I don't feel like I can add anything to a topic, I typically just don't do it. I'm also trying to sort of get away from the great man thing, which I know you've talked about in previous ones like this. So I definitely have done some biography type videos. The one that comes to mind is Smedley Butler.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
yeah, and that was because, like I say in the video, the guy is just so interesting. He's like the Forrest Gump of the early 1900s. If there was a war anywhere in the world, he was there. Um, and so I find the guy fascinating. He was, in the Bonus Army March. He was part of a plot to overthrow FDR. Like he's just a super interesting guy. Um, so people like that, for me anyway, are difficult to come across. I did Smedley Butler because I haven't seen any videos about him specifically. I am planning a biography for this year, another
Oh,
veteran. I'm sort of like I've made veteran videos in the past, and I'm sort of moving towards biographies of veterans. So I did one for myself, and then I did Smedley Butler, and then I'm going to do another one this year. Um, but why don't I do presidents or that kind of stuff? And again, I feel like it's just been done. You've made videos. You search for any president, and there's going to be plenty of content out there for you. Um, and I don't think individuals necessarily have that much impact on history, aside from maybe an event, or maybe if they're a president or something. Um, so even when I was talking about Smedley Butler, I was really just using him as a way to talk about these other things, the Banana
right.
Wars, the Bonus Army. He was just sort of the connecting thread. I didn't like talk about when he got married and how many kids he had or any of that kind of stuff. Um, so I guess like I said, it's been done, and uh, I don't find it all that interesting, if I'm honest. Like the sort of mundane parts of their life, if they did something important, I want to know about that. But in terms of just sort of researching someone's life, I sure hope nobody does that after I die. Like I don't want like these books being written about my life necessarily. I feel like that's almost I guess I shouldn't say invasion of privacy, because most of these people are like incredibly famous presidents and stuff. They having biographies written about them is part of the job, really. Um, so yeah, I feel like it's been done, and I don't find them interesting all
Yeah,
the time anyway. So
that makes sense. I'm a sucker for biographies. Well, I used to be more so when I was younger, especially. But I think the more I thought about it, the more I realized it was like I found them inspirational, like for my own life, because I like, okay, here's a person who, um, like Herbert Hoover, for example, who had a bad reputation, but then you read a book about him and you're like, oh, actually, he was a pretty swell guy. And then look at his humble beginnings and holy crap, what he was able to do and all this. And then you're like, well, maybe I can do something with my life, type of deal. um, but there's also something that's it's a nice package that it comes in, like a good narrative
yeah,
tool. So I guess that's kind of why. But yeah, it is. I think the more I realize when I'm making these presidential biographies now, and they're getting longer and longer, and I think that's the reason why is because I'm trying to show that so much of their life was actually not them that made them who they are, um, and that like it's easy just to throw it on a person because I think most people are pretty egocentric and they picture themselves as the person they're reading about.
yeah.
Anyway, all right,
Whose
it's
turn
your
is it? Is that my turn? Okay.
yeah, yeah. Changing the order up again.
Well, I'm trying to see like what connects to what we've sort of been talking about. So uh, I don't think this is connected. If you didn't already have kids, would you?
Oh wow. Uh, Wow. The older I get, the more I lean towards no, actually. Um, and here's the craziest thing is like a lot of us have kids for selfish reasons. We don't like to say it, but we want our DNA to live on forever. It's like the closest we get to immortality. And I never really thought about it until, recently. And um, so like obviously my daughters are the best thing ever that has ever happened to me. So and like they made my life so much better. Like I'm about to tear up thinking about it, but that all out of the way. Let's get that out of the way now. Uh, it's expensive to raise kids. Like it costs over $1 million just to like provide for one kid. There's been multiple studies on this. If you add it all up, it's a lot of work. It takes, I I used to tell my students half jokingly, hey, when you have kids someday, when you're 30 years old, make sure you're at least 30 years old. Cause like, I don't know how people do, like my parents were, my mom was 21 when she had me. I don't know how they did it. It's like, and I think I do know how they did it. It's like a lot of kids they don't, uh, just have the opportunities they should have because they're just not. And it's kind of like one of those things now, obviously since Roe v. Wade has been overturned and what we're going to see in the few following years, we're going to see a growing child poverty is what we're going to see. Childhood poverty is just going to get even worse. I mean, there's like millions of kids that don't have enough food to eat today in this country. So I think about the economics of it a lot. It's a bleak future in many ways, and so bringing a kid into that, I think, is the main thing. So you're just like, when it comes down to it, am I being selfish? Do I just want my DNA to live on? What are your thoughts on that?
So lately, I've sort of been going through a midlife crisis. I guess, I'm not, about to blow everything up and find some 20-year-old and buy a Ferrari or anything like that. But I've definitely seen a very sudden shift in the way I look at life. And I think a big part of it was realizing that I've been an adult longer than I was a kid. High school was 20 years ago. So I'm sort of finally realizing that this is it, right? Like this is what life is. Like I guess I had always expected like ever increasing. I'm not even sure what.
You're chasing something always.
Yes, yeah. Like I was always waiting, I can't wait until I'm 25 and I can rent a car. I can't wait until, I feel like an adult. I can't wait until I have a retirement, that kind of stuff. And I'm sort of realizing, like I said, that this is it. There's nothing else to life. At this point, I'm seeing everything just repeat. They're rebooting the same movies. The same political issues are just coming back every time. They might rename it something else, but it's the same. And I'm just sort of seeing the same stuff over and over. And I'm like, oh, this is it. I made the comment on my Twitch stream earlier that it really feels like movies, music, TV shows, all of that is geared towards 18 to 24-year-olds. And if us old people happen to like it too, well, that's nice, but that wasn't the intention. Like, it's just not, like, I feel like society is not aimed towards us. Like we are society, and we're trying to like always get the younger people to buy stuff and do this or that. So with that sort of realization that this is it, I feel like the only thing left for me is to have kids. Like that's it. That's the next step. That's all that's left. And I find that to be somewhat depressing because it's like the only way to continue to enjoy life is to create another character and live vicariously through them. Like they see Santa for the first time and their face lights up and they're so happy, and so you are, even though you see Santa all the time, and who cares? Right? So it feels like I feel like the only reason I would have kids is to sort of reintroduce some sort of wonder to the world for me. If the kid gets it, that's great. But like, I feel like it would be very selfish, like to be like, okay, I want to make this kid. And I mean, that's why you have like pageant moms, and those types of people, because they want to live vicariously through them, right? We all recognize that.
And they're bad
But
parents.
yes, but I think like every parent sort of has that on some level, like I just said about Santa and the face lighting up, or going to the zoo and they're so excited about the giraffes or whatever. You wouldn't be excited about the giraffes, but now you are. And so I'm definitely leaning towards no when I think about it that way, and then hard no when I look at the situation we're getting ourselves into. When I think about what are schools going to look like 10 years from now, what is the climate going to look like 20 years from now? Like, if I have a kid today, like, I know what the world looks like today. I don't know what it's going to be when they become an adult, and the coastlines all need to have barriers and stuff like that. So so yeah, I'm in the no category, I think, right now.
Do you care about the survival of the human species?
There's plenty of people having kids. My one or two more, I don't think is gonna.
Your kids would be so smart. We don't want idiocracy, is what I'm saying.
Well, I don't know how. Like, it would take a lot of change in the world for me to be like, yeah, I think bringing a kid into this would be a good idea. And that's not to say that everyone else has made a mistake. It's just that I personally, like, I'm not having a great time with the way the world is right now. So if I'm not having a great time, it feels like it would be mean to sort of put that on someone else. No, even while thinking it's going to get worse, right?
Yeah, I tend to be more optimistic, actually. I know we've been pretty negative here, but I mean, first of all, the Flynn effect is a thing. Every generation does get smarter, believe it or not. But also, I just think about my own journey, like where I was when I was a kid, and I had a very sheltered life, but what saved me was my curiosity, and I think, and that's continuing to like drive me forward with my channel and everything, and because really it's about like it's the fun of learning new things that motivates me, kind of what I asked you earlier about making videos. And so yeah, like if we, as long as, I guess, like the biggest thing that would be scary is the death of curiosity. To me, that would probably be the thing that would make me much more cynical. But I think your kids would be curious. They'd want to learn a lot. So, just putting that out there.
Yeah, but I do feel like society is becoming less curious and will be, like you just said.
I wonder
so
if
while
there's a way to measure I wonder if there are studies on that, because I've thought about this a lot lately. Obviously, I brought it up a lot tonight. Is if that does seriously, if that really is a thing, like the curiosity is really going down, that should be like a crisis. That should be something we should be concerned with as a society, because maybe it is idiocracy is our future.
Dang it, you had said something. You said you had a pretty sheltered life. You and I have talked about this. I definitely did not. My childhood experience was not very fun. And so I'm sure that plays into, my feelings about what a childhood is. So there is a bit of that. And And I have also thought, like, I feel like I have a pretty good grasp on how the world works now. And I feel like I would be able to explain that to a child and get them started on the right foot. And I'm not talking like I know math. It's um, I can tell them how the police actually work. Growing up, I was always taught that they're the good guys, always do what they say, blah blah. Um, and you know, with I can't even say recent events. With the events over the last several decades, it's become clear to me that that childhood perception is incorrect. And I feel like if I could start a child off on the right foot rather than
with an NWA record. If the police.
uh, maybe not that extreme, but I feel like if I could tell a kid like how the world really works, not the fairy tale version that most kids grow up with, that they would have a really good starting point. Um, but like I said, I feel like I feel like things are going to get worse before they get better. I feel optimistic about the long-term future, but I feel like the short term is troubling.
We'll have to get through the tumultuous 20s, as I think they're going to be called first. Yeah. Before we get to the singularity in 2030. Anyway.
I have the perfect follow-up question for this. Oh, but I asked you the kid's question. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, but my question's related too. I just was excited about. What do you think is the defining political issue of our time, of the 2020s? Like, what is the big political issue that underlies it all?
Sex and gender. So that's not just LGBTQ rights, trans rights, but also women's rights, abortion. I can't believe this is a thing again, like that we have to deal with. And so now that we have abortion as an issue, and being able to use whatever bathroom you want as an issue, and when can people start gender affirming care, and when should surgeries be allowed, blah blah. I think that's sort of our current civil rights issue. um it maybe 20 years ago I would have said gay marriage, and so now it feels much more like trans issues and women's issues are coming back, and those are interrelated, because I mean, for some reason, when it comes to trans people, we only care about the trans women, and that is males who transition to female, or sorry, whatever the correct terms for that is. So, and it all comes back to sort of the gay panic that we've seen in previous decades. It just sort of resurfaces over and over.
Moral
like,
panics.
oh, these guys are coming after your kids or your daughters or whatever. So yeah, I think that's the major issue. And I think it's gonna be, yeah, the defining feature of at least the first half of this century. Because I mean, people laugh when I make this comparison, but I think we are when I saw The Handmaid's Tale, the person who recommended it to me thought it was just a fun alternate future sort of story. But within a few episodes, I was like, this could absolutely happen here. Like,
Yeah.
We are so close to this already. And of course, they didn't believe me. They just thought I was exaggerating. But then Roe v. Wade got overturned, and all of a sudden it was real. So I am very afraid. I don't think I don't think we're gonna have handmaids that are sex slaves, that kind of stuff, obviously. But
Christian nationalism in general.
Yes, I think we are the Christian Saudi Arabia. American Christianity is so wildly different from European Christianity. We were founded by extremists, and ever since then, the splinter religions from that are just more and more extreme. So that's my big fear is that we're going to roll back women's rights. We might, people, as soon as Roe v. Wade was overturned, they were talking about overturning Obergefell, which is gay marriage. They're talking about getting rid of interracial marriage. Even that was part of. I mean, you know this already, but that was part of the decision in overturning Roe v. Wade. I think it was Clarence Thomas that said we should also revisit these other ones. And so it's no longer a conspiracy that they're trying to take away rights. They've publicly said that is their goal. And so that's my big fear. And also a big reason why I don't necessarily want to have kids, because I feel like it's going to get worse. Because, right now there are states that still allow abortion. People are traveling from Texas to go to these other states. But I think they're going to start cracking down on that. And I think they're eventually going to try a federal ban. And I think it might pass before people are like, whoa, this is real. We need to do something. Like it's going to take something huge for people to shift and be like, wow, we really have to change this and turn this around.
Now you keep saying they, just so everyone's clear, you're talking about basically Christian nationalists,
typically,
right?
Christian nationalists, right-wing Republicans,
evangelical.
Yeah,
we're talking about a specific brand of Republican, though.
Yeah. Like the extremes,
which they're a very clear minority in this country, but they have a lot of power.
Yeah, a disproportionate amount of power.
Yeah.
I
put the Handmaid's Tale, such an important book too. If you ever get a chance to read it, I didn't know about the book until the show, of course.
But, same.
I bring up the book because it originally was published at the middle of the Reagan presidency, the 80s, and that was when Christian nationalism really kind of entered the mainstream with Reagan, and this kind of blend of fundamentalist Christianity with government, and that separation of church and state is definitely something that needs to be protected. That is kind of fragile when you think about it. So I think we shouldn't take it for granted.
Well, this leads right into my question then.
Awesome.
What is your biggest political fear for the next 20 years?
Oh wow, how do we do that? we didn't know our questions ahead of time.
Correct.
Everyone.
Yeah.
I think that, my concerns always revolve around economics. That's just kind of where my brain gravitates towards. So I'm always looking at wealth inequality, and everyone's always like, oh, wealth inequality is just kind of, it's supposed to happen, but not like this. Like we're living through a second Gilded Age now, but in many ways it's worse, in my opinion.
Oh yeah.
Because and I think the thing that people don't really understand is that rich people are going to be screwed too, because rich people depend on poor people to buy their crap. And so the society will tumble. It really will be dystopian if we don't figure out extreme wealth inequality. In our lifetimes, we were born in the early 80s, elder millennials. Our whole lives, we've seen stagnant incomes adjusted for inflation. It really is. You look at the data, the only reason why there hasn't been revolution, in my opinion, is because prices on a lot of stuff hasn't been too bad. But now look what's been happening in the last 2 years. And so I think we're kind of due for some dramatic political upheaval. I think actually it's going to happen. But what I see is populism, which has already been both on the right and the left. I think that the kind on the right is mostly driven by, Trump, of course, but it's mostly rhetorical based. It's there's not really much there for policy, but there is this very specific language that says, hey, you know, DC's the swamp. That's where the elites are. We need to do something about it. I mean, that was very smart of him, the way he marketed his 2016 presidential campaign with that. But then on the left,
I still can't believe anybody bought that. I mean, as soon as he got in, he installed all the same people. Like, it's just
make the swamp swampier. Yeah, I know. But yeah, instead of like political insiders, now we're going to have political insiders and billionaires in my cabinet. Anyway, yeah, like, so on the left, I feel like the Democratic Party has done a much better job at kind of suppressing that populism. We saw it with Bernie a lot. We saw a little bit with Elizabeth Warren in terms of presidential races. But also, what's a lot of people don't realize is there's an increasing amount of members of Congress who are definitely more populist minded. I always bring up, like, I mean, Fetterman obviously he got in there. He's just I would say a populist. Katie Porter is a populist. A few other, like the whole, I mean, you could even argue that AOC and Omar, they're kind of, they wouldn't call themselves that. They would call themselves progressive or whatever. But I think at the heart of it is increasingly people on the left and right are realizing that, I mean, this is the reason why both people on the left and right are fans of George Carlin, because this is the stuff that he brought up all the time, and these clips still get circulated. It's literally like it's a big club, but you ain't in it.
Yeah.
And we used to think that, hey, we can be a member of that club, but increasingly people are like, oh, I'm never going to get an invitation, am I? And so that's what I think is going to drive politics the next really 20 years, I think. So.
Okay, I hadn't even thought of incoming equality, so it's a good one.
Yeah, well, we are the 1% here, so.
I mean, globally we are, right? I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, we are globally. Okay. It's crazy. All right. Yeah, my next question is gonna. You're up though, right? No, I'm up.
No, yeah, you.
Am I? Gosh,
yeah, I just asked you the 20 years question.
Oh, okay. So yeah, this works out. So about related to what I was just talking about, I think a lot of the populism started with both the Tea Party movement and the Occupy Wall Street movement. That happened. A lot of people, which I'm hoping maybe you will make videos about these, or myself in the future. But like, I remember Occupy Wall Street pretty vividly. You know, what was it? 2010, right? Was the peak?
Yeah, 2010. Yeah. 2011 maybe, but yeah.
But if you remember, it just kind of stopped. Like everybody went home, and I guess they just had to go back to work, right? Because you can't, you know. And so, what do you think? What's the legacy, in your opinion, of Occupy Wall Street? And like, do we even see? Did it even make a difference? So that's kind of a two-parter question there.
I don't think it made a difference. If anything, it demotivated people from becoming politically active again, because they tried, nothing happened. Okay, you know, if this didn't work, what else would? And I've sort of again seen that cycle repeat. Recently, we had the r/anti-work that was becoming really popular. Again, I got really invested in Occupy Wall Street when it happened. I was extremely bummed out when it fizzled away, like you said. So anti-work was starting to pick up steam, and I was all about it. Like, yeah, I was in there all the time. You know, I was pushing it on Twitter and all that stuff. I was really into it. But then again, that just fizzled out and went nowhere. So I think the legacy of these sorts of things is in convincing people that they can't change anything. Even if we get tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people together to protest Wall Street or protest stagnant wages or anything like that, it doesn't go anywhere, and it fizzles out. Or some buffoon goes on Fox News and ruins it for everyone. And so to me, personally anyway, it's made me extremely skeptical of other movements that people who think are going to change everything. BreadTube is a good example. The left leaning sort of subreddit. Again, in the early days, I was all about it. Like, yeah, we need more left leaning creators. We need to amplify this content, et cetera, et cetera. But there's just so much infighting in BreadTube that it tore itself apart. None of the creators who have historically been associated with BreadTube are anymore. In fact, some of them have very purposely put distance between. So like these populist, left-leaning, if not leftist, movements seem to burn real hot for a while and then fizzle out. They can't seem to keep it going or put it into action. And I think a big reason for that is, conservatives just want to keep it the way it is. Maybe roll it back to the way it was, but mostly just protect how it is now. Lefties want to change how it is, but we all have different ideas on how that change should happen. Some people are socialists, some people are communists, some people are anarchist. None of us agree. And if I say I want to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour, the person next to me wants to abolish work entirely, and when you're on the same side as someone like that, you're not going to get anywhere, because if arguing for a $15 minimum wage makes sense to people. They may not agree with it, but they understand the concept. Abolish work is like, what does that even mean? How are we going to get stuff done?
The police. Same thing.
Yeah,
it's horrible rhetoric.
I think defund the police was a good idea, and I don't think there was any other words they could have used to communicate that while keeping it 3 words long. But it definitely was misinterpreted as completely defund the police, so that there's just no police, like abolish the police. And that's not really what it was. It was, reduce their funding and put that towards something else.
Right.
But defund the police is another example of a political movement that I really thought was going to go somewhere that just fizzled out. No police department in the country was defunded or disbanded. They might have been defunded for like a few months and then they quietly reinstated it. Just nothing changes. Black Lives Matter is another one. All about ending systemic racism and injustice and profiling and all of that. But the right managed to convince everyone that this was like a Black Power movement or something, and it sort of fizzled out. Even people who agree with Black Lives Matter today won't use that phrase because they know it's toxic, just sort of like defund the police. Like,
we're woke.
It's become, it's become toxic.
It's clear that one side of the political spectrum is much more effective at communicating for the last 40 years.
It's because they have a very simple position, and that's no change. That's it.
And people on the left generally are like, well, it's actually complicated. There's multiple solutions. We could do this. No, you need to simplify the message. That's where the appeal of populism, I think, is going to have to. That's the only way forward, because you make some good points. At the same time, though, man, that was depressing.
I know. I'm sorry.
Man. Oh, man.
But you said it yourself. Occupy Wall Street fizzled out, and that was really the first political movement that I really became invested in. I don't, before that, I was in the Army, so I was all about America all the time. It wasn't until I got home and I got home from Iraq. I had 1 semester left. That was my student teaching semester. And then I graduated right at in December 2010. So just as like the height of the recession. And I couldn't find a job to save my life. And that's what started making me really angry about the way things are.
Mm.
So that was the first one that I was like, yeah, let's do something. I want to get involved. Let's make this happen. Um, I'm gonna throw my sister under the bus on this one. My sister has always been like a hippie, the classical hippie with the headband, all that stuff. And she went to an Occupy Wall Street protest carrying a sign about chemtrails, which still to this day, I'm anyway.
All
But she
right.
went to an Occupy Wall Street to protest chemtrails, and it's stuff like that on the left that often causes these movements to fall apart. Like I just said about abolishing work entirely. Like that, what is that? Like,
Yeah.
get out of here. That's not a realistic. So when there are, you know, when there are people on your side with these ridiculous ideas, it really devalues the movement as a whole.
Isn't the problem though that the fact that there are sides to begin with? Like, I don't like to frame things in terms of teams. It's like, hey, uh, why don't we like? People are talking a lot of trash about Andrew Yang and his Forward Party, but if you look at his platform, see, you just rolled your eyes. But see, when you look at his platform, though, the only thing that's on the platform is one thing, and that's, do you even know what it is?
No.
Is ranked choice voting or alternate
Okay.
voting, because in his opinion, everything else doesn't even matter until we fix voting. And that's why, like, I've been trying to focus on, zoom in on an issue that maybe will fix other, like, have a ripple effect,
Yeah. Yeah.
and because I do feel like ranked choice voting is catching on. For example, like we've seen it in Alaska and Maine, even in primaries here in Kansas. So I guess to kind of add a little bit of optimism there. Because yeah, it is a downer.
So the reason I'm not a big fan of okay, I was fine with Andrew Yang, but I'm not a fan of the Forward
Forward Party.
Party
Yeah.
because I think it's somewhat meaningless. If you want to go for ranked choice voting, let's do that. I'm all about that. But when you look at who is in the Forward Party, it's all Republicans. It's all, and when I say Republicans, I mean the never Trump
Right.
Republicans. Like they've sort of abandoned the Republican Party and are trying to, kind of push things in a different direction, not left or right, but forward. And because of that, I sort of see it as a Trojan horse. I guess I'm sort of worried that it's just going to become the Republican Party again, because that's who's in it. So they're going to drive the policy that way. They might get people in for ranked choice voting because that is a legitimately good idea. But then, what's point two going to be? What does the future look like for that party? And yeah, the fact that they don't have policy positions on any of the other things makes them really hard to take seriously. It's like a single issue party,
Which is basically most third parties in history.
Yeah, but as you'll recall, like most third parties just don't go anywhere.
Unless you have ranked
It's
choice
certainly
voting.
not.
Ranked choice voting would actually get third parties elected, then they would
So
become the major party. And the
it's,
Republican Party was a third party, technically, in
well, yeah,
1856. So.
but that was back in the day, before the lines had really been drawn. So I mean, I would say most single issue parties though end up fizzling out.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't really take it seriously. I see it as a way for Andrew Yang to try and stay relevant until 2024. So yeah, that's sort of my take on it.
Yeah, it's reasonable.
But I do agree with you though that like ranked choice voting would solve, it would like cascade solve a number of other issues.
Yeah.
Gerrymandering is a big one.
Yep.
Congressional districts, all that stuff, which I think is almost the prerequisite for us to solve anything else.
Right. Because making us truly more representative.
Yeah. Under the system we currently have, I mean, you and I have butted heads on this before about the spoiler effect.
Yeah.
But enough people believe in it that they might tell you, yeah, vote third party, while knowing secretly they're going to vote for their own party, which will make them win.
Right. Well,
it's just the mathematical reality of it.
Yeah, and it would take a generation before it worked like it was supposed to, where you would see less strategic voting, and you'd actually, because we're so tribal now.
Yeah.
You can't. The idea though is that, like, well, because you look at, I'm really a fan of Australia's democracy. Like, I think that's the way to do it. Australia down under, they're doing a lot of things right. So I think if we
every time I say that, I get a lot of comments of like, "Oh, they're a tyrannical country now. Haven't you seen like with the vaccine stuff?" I'm sure that's what they're referring to.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, yeah. I guess it was the United States, right? Okay. I think it's your turn.
Okay. Even if it wouldn't change the outcome, is there any vote you would go back and change?
Oh. Like, you mean for presidential elections?
Or, whatever, senator, whatever it is that you're like, I can't believe I voted that way.
Oh, me personally, how I voted?
Yes.
Oh, I don't know. Like, I think I tend to vote third party, and
Okay.
I hate to say it, but like, being in Kansas though is how I justify it, because it's a very red state, as you know, and I feel like I want to try to support alternative voices. I was a big Ron Paul fan, like because like especially 2008. That's when I really first got into politics a lot. And I was somebody who, I saw Obama in person. I was like, I like Obama, but then he started to become a little bit too corporate for me. And then I was like, well, how about this Ron Paul fellow, or Dennis Kucinich or something? And so there was exciting candidates that year. And but ultimately, Ron Paul, I think the problem with I know this because I'm still Facebook friends with some of them, but I met a lot of fellow Ron Paul fans, and Ron Paul still to this day, I still agree with him on a lot of issues, but I didn't realize at the time that there was this xenophobia / nativism that his campaign tapped into, and I wasn't even aware of it. Like, when we think about America First, which has become a mainstream Republican thing now, I think it's been taken to the extreme. Like, it's been
America only.
Yeah, like it's gotten to a point now where it's so reductive, like where they're just like, no matter what, don't give aid to any other country. And maybe when I was in high school, I would have agreed with that, when I blame my ignorance. But yeah, the older I get, the more I realize, like, wow, it's really all connected, and there's so many things going on behind the scenes. And so I think the problem with me in 2008 was like, maybe if I realized some of that stuff. Although I will say, I'm still a big fan of Ron Paul's foreign policy. Not generally, non-interventionism is. I'm a big fan. You know this. We've talked about it. But maybe is that a good enough answer for you?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I mean, I also supported Ron Paul until I read his book.
Which one?
That was one of the first ones. I'd have to pull it up, but it was 2008, around there.
Okay, one of the first. So okay.
Yeah, and I read his book, and I remember there being, like, he had anti-abortion arguments, if I remember correctly. Like, he describes an abortion where he's like pulling out body parts and stuff, and I was like, come on, man, like, this is settled, right? But then also the things about cutting foreign aid, that is something that I would have agreed with when I was a teenager. But as I've even into my 20s, I realized what soft power was and how
Yeah.
important that is. It's more important than actual power. It is, in a sense, buying friends, right? But
Yeah.
if we don't, someone else will. Like that country needs that money. They're going to get it from somewhere. If we pull out, China is more than happy to take our place.
Yeah.
And we saw that with geez, what was that Pan Pacific Trade Alliance thing
Yeah.
that Trump
Yep.
immediately, yeah, when he was talking about pulling us out, I was like, if we take our ball and go home, the next person with a ball is China, and that's of course who ended up taking the lead
Yep.
on that thing. So you can cut foreign aid all you want, but you're gonna also cut America as a world power, because they want their dams built, they want highways and bridges and stuff, and if we aren't paying for it, someone's going to.
And it's an
Or
investment too. A lot of
yeah,
times
yeah,
when
yeah.
we send the money out, it comes back through other ways later on down the road. It's like it's complicated. Again, it's complicated, and
Yeah.
that's generally why you see like America first only on the right, because people on the left are like, well, America first, yes, but in this instance, and this, and yeah, the messaging is all off.
If I could change any vote, by the way, I voted for Bush in 2004. That was
Mm.
the first presidential election I could take part in, and I was in the army. So I was like, yeah, Bush. But
Yeah,
with 10 years of hindsight, I'm like, oh my God, it wouldn't change the outcome at all. I lived in a red state, just like you. He was going to get our electoral votes no matter what.
yeah,
But I'm like, I actually, when I started my YouTube channel, I made myself like a centrist. And I would say I've voted for Republicans for president and Democrats for president. And it's Bush. That's the one I'm talking about. And I'm like, ugh, I can't believe I did that. But, it is what it is.
Hey, Bush in 2000 was very appealing to me. Talked about non-interventionism. Yeah. Bush right after 9/11 when he's on the rebels. The whole world's going to hear from him. I love that Bush.
I mean, after 9/11, every single person was pro-America, American flags everywhere. Like,
It's beautiful.
It's beautiful. Looking back, I'm like, oof.
Well,
I think,
but that's patriotism, though. That's not nationalism. Like, there
yeah, but
was this
I
pride.
think that like lit the spark for sort of what we're experiencing now with the nationalism. Yeah, I think 9/11 really changed a lot of Americans' views, at least for our generation, or people alive currently. Really shifted things to xenophobic isolation, that kind of stuff. Which, yeah, bummer.
Yeah, I mean,
But I don't see that going any other way. Like I can't imagine 9/11 happens and we're not out for revenge and we're not putting American flags everywhere, because that's what happened after Pearl Harbor, right? Like that's the exact same thing. Everyone wanted revenge.
well, the
So
authorization to use military force, though, that I think just giving the president that much power to just go after, because like that's what ultimately led to all the drone warfare, where it's like, you know what, the war on terrorism is just going to last forever. We're just going
yeah,
to go up wherever we want.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So that's
It's like the next iteration of the war on drugs. It's one of those things that can just continue for as long as we want, because there will always be terrorism.
yep. War on nouns are always wars that will be too expensive and never end.
Yeah.
All right. I think it's. Wait, I did. What was the last question? We were so good.
I just asked you about the vote that you would change.
Okay.
The thing is, though, I have 9 questions crossed off on my list.
Oh, then so I have 2 more for you.
Okay.
Oh, wow. This is great. This is related too. So, I have this theory I've been developing about, the more I study political history, throughout history, I have come to the conclusion that we haven't really had good leaders throughout most history. Like most politicians in history have not been good leaders. They've been good communicators. Do you
Okay.
agree or disagree with that? And why? He's gonna be. You're very
This
careful.
is, yeah. Well, it's not that I'm trying to be careful. I'm trying to think of. I mean, when I think of leaders who were great communicators, um, those are the ones we typically forget about. I think, like everyone knows Washington, Lincoln, FDR. I think those people were leaders. But when you bring up Cleveland or Truman, I think they were more communicators. So I think we've had
Hmm.
a mix. I think great leaders are more rare, though.
Yeah, they are
Like
rare.
I mean, the examples I just gave, that was one per century.
I think Washington
So
was one of the few that truly was like, and that's why people are like, oh, all the bad stuff. Okay, yeah, yeah. Historical relativism. Let's get that out of the way. But just being somebody that so many people respected, somebody who was willing, who made lots of mistakes, but they owned up to the mistakes, and they learned from the mistakes. Like I also bring up Teddy Roosevelt because a lot of people don't realize he was constantly evolving as a person. Like he wasn't like he was constantly changing his mind and
yeah,
but also he's an example of somebody with a lot of charisma, he
yeah.
was good at communicating. And I think FDR was a great communicator. I think I mean a lot of people would argue Ronald Reagan was a good leader, but I think he's known as the great communicator.
Yeah, I would say he's a communicator more than a leader. But I'm sort of realizing now that the people I've identified were all wartime presidents. Um,
Yeah.
so I wonder if that's where I'm coming from with that. Um,
War automatically makes leaders look better just by default.
mm,
You have to really screw it up to look bad as a I mean, even James Madison, he was president during the War of 1812. I don't know if he necessarily did anything special from what I've read, but hey, uh, we didn't lose the war technically. I mean, uh, Abraham Lincoln, though, if he wasn't president during the Civil War, would we really think of him as such a great leader? But also, he was good at communicating. I mean, he was a heck of a
I think,
speechwriter.
yeah, I think a prerequisite for a great leader is that they have to be a great communicator.
Okay.
Um, um, yeah, because I can think of plenty people who are great communicators who are not necessarily great leaders. Obama is one that kind of comes to mind for me, which hurts because I really liked him. Great communicator,
Yeah.
got almost nothing done. Um,
And he could have. He really could have those first 2 years.
yeah. I think he could have gone all the way with healthcare, but
Yep.
he didn't, um, which is frustrating. I mean, that's another one of those things that was just immediately vilified. And I never really understood why until I made that healthcare video. But Obamacare made everything so much simpler, like with the tiers and like understanding like gold, silver, platinum, blah, blah. Because before that, health insurance plans were just all over the place and you really couldn't compare like what these were because one company would have 12 different tiers and another one would have 4 and you're like, well, what's the equivalent here? What am I supposed to choose?
I almost forgot
But
about
now
that. Yeah.
but now it's fairly straightforward. It's still complicated as hell, but it's not as complicated as it used to be. um so that was like one of his great achievements, but aside from that I really struggle to think of what else he did that was lasting. um so yeah, he's a great communicator, but I'm not sure that he was a great leader. He took a very like um, he had a very light touch on the gas pedal, I would say.
Yeah, because he should have been this unifying figure, it seems.
Yeah,
But he just
yeah.
didn't. A few
I was
messed
one of those
up.
people who was all about the hope, right? Like,
Yeah.
2008, I saw one of his like infomercials, I guess you would call it. It was on YouTube though, it was like a 20-minute video of what he wants to get done. And I watched that and I was like, you're my guy. Like, this is who I'm voting
Yeah.
for. There's just nobody else. And so I was all about it. And then I was very disappointed, a few years in when nothing really was accomplished. So
Other than like bailing out Wall Street.
yeah, okay, but
Congratulations.
that a lot of people seem to forget that mess was created by Bush in like the last few months of his presidency, and then
Exactly.
Obama had to clean it up. And I really don't think that there was any way he could have quickly without bailing him out.
Yeah, that's a complicated situation too.
Yeah, of course. Like,
it's easy.
I would have loved for him to bail out the taxpayers, but do you have any idea how difficult it would be to, like, okay, who has a mortgage? How much is left on it? Okay, let's figure out a percentage that the government should give you, etc. Or today we can just solve it with the bank with one big
technically,
check, right?
technically they did bail out the citizens with they suspended the FICA taxes. So for a while there, we were paying less taxes. Then I never forget when
Didn't Trump just do that? Trump just did that.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, that's
I very much remember. Yeah,
like the both Biden and Trump with COVID throughout the pandemic. The basically getting your tax breaks early is what they did, and a little bit of extra as well. So that's why some people were saying this is the closest we'll ever get to UBI. And I was like, kind of, not really though. But yeah, like I'm pretty passionate about the idea that I think if you just give money directly to people, one of the few things that governments are good at, I think, is just giving money to people. I think that's one of the best things you can, because you know how to spend your money better than anyone else. I mean, there's some people that maybe, so generally, I trust people to know what they
on the
need.
whole. Yeah, I would say.
Yeah, on the whole.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're on for our last question. It's been an hour and a half or 2 hours and a half. Holy crap! So we better wrap this up because then it's getting late. I'm sorry.
That's fine. Well, I have a few more written down here, but I feel like these are kind of boring now. What federal department or agency would you get rid of?
Oh, the first thing that pops in my mind is the DEA. I don't know how much you know this, but I'm very critical of the war on drugs, and I think, it's been you'd probably agree, it's been a total failure, and it's ruined so many lives. I think that it also had a negative ripple effect, and I think that everybody that's in prison right now for possession of drugs or using drugs should be released immediately. They should be in a hospital getting treatment for addiction. In the same way, obviously alcohol is way worse than some drugs that are illegal.
Yeah.
In fact, some of those drugs that are illegal, like psilocybin, can cure alcoholism. Has been proved in studies, and it's illegal. So it's like illegal to. Oh, my alarm's going weird. Some weird alarms going off here. Sorry, I turned that off. But yeah, so ending the war on drugs, and I think the DEA. Obviously, you need to have. If you were to legalize drugs, it would need to be heavily regulated, no doubt about it. Much more than it is now, frankly, because we've seen how bad the federal government's been at regulating legal drugs, which has in part led to the opioid crisis and literally the life expectancy going down in our country the last 4 years. It's amazing. People aren't why aren't more people talking about the fact that 40-year-olds, 50-year-olds are dropping dead from ODing on stuff that's legal?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway. What about you? What was there any part of government you would get rid of?
the Space Force.
Oh,
Get rid of it. Completely useless. It's just
what
a
do
way to
they do?
militarize space. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's all it is. It's a way. Okay, I'm gonna make this argument in an upcoming video this year.
nice.
But you know how everyone says that we waste so much money on military spending every year. I agree with this take, but you've seen that argument around. It's not like we pile up all those billions of dollars and light them on fire, right? That money goes to Lockheed Martin, Boeing, Raytheon, the local food supplier. It goes into the economy, right? Um,
Right.
so I don't know that we waste it. I wish it wasn't being spent on war, which is why I don't understand why universal healthcare isn't pushed more. Um, think about Bayer and Merrick and all of the other pharmaceutical companies. Wouldn't they rather just get government contracts for billions of dollars? Like,
Yeah.
wouldn't they rather be the next Raytheon who just gets paid from the government? Like, if we made healthcare universal and nationalized it the way we do the military, we would pour billions of dollars into healthcare. And again, that money wouldn't just be lit on fire. It would be spent on making sure everyone is still productive. Like it would save the economy, and I think make a lot of people very rich.
Mm.
So when I look at the Space Force, what that is a way for government money and military spending to go to SpaceX and Blue Origin and all
Mm.
of these private companies going to space. They are the Lockheed Martin and the Boeing of the Space Force.
Hmm.
And that's why I just hate it. Get rid of it.
I
I
see.
don't think it's a useful military branch. When the Air Force was spun off of the Army, there was a reason. Like, we have ground forces, we have air forces. Obviously, they should be in their own branches. We have 0 people in militarized space. Um, Maybe if aliens invade someday, we should have a space force, but it doesn't, there's no practical reason for it except to funnel government money into more private corporations, in my view.
I think your point about universal healthcare, I mean, there's a really powerful lobby that's kind of putting up the roadblock right now, isn't it? The health insurance lobby that's really
Well, yeah, of
putting
course,
everything
because
up.
they make
Yeah,
yeah,
that's the
they make
racket.
millions off of the current system. Yeah.
Yeah, the middleman. So honestly, I bet you a lot of people within the healthcare industry would be totally on board. But yeah, they're just not. They don't have the same power. Incredibly, everyone talks about big pharma, but
Yeah.
uh, big pharma does pretty well in Canada, despite prescription drugs being
Yeah.
much cheaper up there. They're doing fine up there. They're making money up there too. Yeah, that's a really good thing that needs to be brought up more.
Hey, Marcus, do you know? Okay, here it is on screen. Do you know who maintained the GPS before the Space Force? We've had that for a long time, right? It was the Air Force,
Air Force.
and they managed it just fine.
Well,
Anyway,
he actually brought that point up earlier that essentially the Space Force is just like the Air Force, but just with a couple extra things. Like, you make a good point. I used to be much more excited about space exploration, but yeah, the older I get, the more I'm just like, why can't we just fix our problems here first before we,
okay,
talking
you
about going
just
to the
touched on
moon
you just touched on something that
even.
me and JJ have been talking about this as well, so it's sort of on my mind. When I see, okay, I love Kurzgesagt. I'm friends with Philip, the main guy. Love their content,
Mhm.
but when I see videos about how we're gonna terraform Mars with lasers, I'm like, at that, that's, um, I feel like that's almost like it's just science fiction, really, and it's almost like inspiration porn in a sense. Like,
Yeah.
don't worry, we have it all figured out. Once we get there, we know what to do. And I'm like, make videos about things we can actually affect, please. You know,
Yeah.
they've made all kinds of great videos about politics and the environment and stuff. But when they make those science fiction domes on Mars, I'm like, nobody watching this video is going to be alive for that. It's just, it's not going to happen. And so I am like, focus on important stuff, I guess. And again,
Yeah.
I know that there's a place for those types of videos, but when I see it, I am like, this has very little educational value to me. It's just hopefulness, I guess.
Oh, we had a question there. Thanks for that. Yeah. Uh, yeah, no, I agree. You kind of sound like a conservative. Like, no, stop the change. Let's just focus on what we already have first. Yeah, no, I'm sorry. Actually, it's related to my last question for you.
Okay.
You've had a similar journey as me, I think, politically over the years. Generally, obviously, we disagree on probably some stuff, but how would you summarize how your political beliefs have changed? But specifically, I want you to narrow down, like, on the last 5 years, like going back to 2018, let's say. Have you noticed specifically how your political views have changed during that time period?
Oh yeah, big in major ways.
I could kind of tell
Um,
watching your videos. Yeah.
um, so this is going to get quite personal, but you know, you're all good people. Um, after, sorry, need to readjust my, there we go. After my deployment to Iraq, I came home. Like I said earlier, I had my first, I had my last semester of college, and then I became a teacher. And rather shamefully, that entire time I was a high functioning alcoholic. I was not, I was nobody at school, but I never, okay. Monday morning to Friday afternoon, I was clean and sober. But from Friday afternoon until the next Monday, I was not. I was not doing very well, as many of us veterans were not. And it eventually came to a head, and I ended up in the VA hospital, the psychiatric VA hospital, and I was there for several months. And it was while I was there that I started to gain a better understanding of other people's plights. So not everyone there was there voluntarily. Some of them had been court ordered, and and that sort of stuff. So I started to hear stories about police injustice. I started to hear stories about how they were screwed by the regular healthcare system, and stuff like that. And I really started to pay more attention to that after that experience, after meeting with people who were perfectly nice. They were in the military, which means at some point they were, you know, more put together, I guess, if you want to phrase it that way.
Mhm.
And you know, just some unfortunate events happen to them, and they end up in legal trouble. They end up with addiction issues and that kind of stuff. Um, and I realized while I was there, I am no different from these people. Um, I am also here because I have addiction issues. So I can't sit here and be like, oh, I would never make the mistakes you guys do. I absolutely would. I'm here. So after that, that's when I went back to college, because I needed to sort of reinvent or like figure out what I wanted to do. And after that college experience, when I started the YouTube channel, that's when I was like, okay, I'm free to sort of um, look into some of these topics that have been on my mind for a while. And I think the police thing was the first one, because I knew people who had just been screwed over royally. Even though they did something wrong, they were like way overcharged or way overpunished.
Hmm.
And uh, since it was such a diverse group, I would talk to a white person who was in trouble for this and a black person who was also in trouble for this, but went to jail for twice the amount of time. And I'm seeing these injustices and how it works. And so I was like, if I was wrong about the police being, the universal good guys, what else am I wrong about? And I started to adopt that strategy when I went into videos. And the biggest shift for me was the feminism video, because in my book of eventual video topics, I had feminism in there, and when I wrote it in the book, the point was to laugh at feminists. I was I was very much on the H3 bandwagon of feminists are just obnoxious and deserve to be laughed at. The blue hairs who just cry about everything, right? And so I went into the video like, am I wrong about this? Legitimately, I want to know what feminism believes, what their approach to these various different topics are, like sex and gender and that kind of stuff. And while I was researching it on my own, I became a feminist. Or rather, I realized I was a feminist, and I just didn't want to call myself that because I thought feminist was like a bad word. Um, and that was a huge, huge shift in my personality. Honestly, I became a different person after that video, because I
Wow.
became much more empathetic. Um, I used to be like, they just want attention. They just want more rights or whatever. And I'm like, no, they're behind and they deserve to be lifted up to where everyone else is. Um, and then so I took that approach to you many future videos. What if I'm wrong? What if I'm wrong about this? Um, and I think that was a really good shift for me. And it wouldn't have happened if I didn't end up in the VA hospital. It's just that was a prerequisite. If I had just managed to quit drinking on my own, I probably never would have had that sort of awakening. So yeah, it's one of those double-edged swords, because without that terrible period of my life, I wouldn't have this period of my life.
Yeah. Yeah. We need those dark moments sometimes to see the light, as they say. And I'm sorry you went through all that. I
Yeah,
mean,
it's
maybe yeah, like you said, it's good that you went through all that.
yeah, but it's also extremely common. Um, uh, I've I used to tell people used to ask me what was the hardest part of your deployment, and my answer was always and still coming home.
Exactly.
It
Yep. That's
is that was
very
the
common
worst
answer.
part. The world, I I was gone for a year and a half, and when I came back, everything was different. Everyone else had continued their lives. Like I said, when I came back, I had one semester left of college. I was gone for a year and a half, so all of my friends had graduated and left. I was just there by myself, no friends anymore. It was just incredibly lonely. No one, I couldn't relate to anybody else. Um, I went back to my job at Subway,
Yeah, I used to
and
work at Subway too.
and I couldn't stand the customers who were like, I didn't get enough olives. I didn't get it. Those little things. I was like, oh my God, this is what you're complaining about. Are you kidding me? And even my coworkers, they'd be like, oh man, I had to work 9 hours today. I can't wait. Like this sucks so much. And I'm like, yeah, and then what? And then what happened? You got to go home and sit in your couch and play video games and drink a beer. Stop complaining. Like I was very, very cynical and angry when I came
Chip
home.
on your shoulder.
You know, a little bit, but more so like I just couldn't relate to these people anymore.
Oh.
And I think the reason is like when you're deployed, the world is so simple. You know, you wake up, you do your job. If you have some free time, you go to the gym or play poker or whatever, and rinse and repeat. It's so simple. It's dangerous, but it's simple. Then you come home and, oh, I didn't text back fast enough. Oh, I'm not supposed to wear this. Oh, geez, and it's like, why does any of this matter? And that just made me, you know, that's partially why I turned to drinking, because I hated everything when I came home. And yeah, it's again, you know, people have asked me also, would you take back your service? And no, I mean, that's how I paid for college twice. And without that experience, I wouldn't be where I am today. I think my being a veteran has aided in my, I mean, I don't want to say credibility, but, you know, when I criticize the country, people can't say that I didn't put my service in, right? Like you know, what have you ever done? People can't say that to me. So they're more likely to sort of listen to the argument, I guess. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no, I can relate. I've had close family members suffer with addiction, and it's no good. I know people now that are struggling
Yeah.
with it, and everybody. It shouldn't be taboo. It should be out in the open, and we all like. I'm just tired of people, especially men, typically just like putting on the tough facade. You know.
That was a big part of it. Like for several
Yeah.
years of my drinking, I was like, I can fix this. I'm gonna brute force myself to fix this and be happy again. And that didn't work out. So while I was at the VA hospital, I was like, look, I've tried all of my ways. Let's try your way. And that turned things around for me. But for many years, I sort of refused VA help because I was like, no, I'm going to do it on my own. And yeah, obviously I couldn't. But a lot of veterans are that way. They refuse the help because they think they can do it on their own, and sometimes they can't. So,
And a lot of it just comes down to, I think a lot of us, we have trauma that we experience that we just haven't dealt with yet. Actually, shout out to a really good show that I've been watching. Me and Mrs. Beat have been watching called Shrinking. It's on Apple TV, starring Jason Segel. Check it out. It's amazing. There's a veteran in there that, well, I've only seen the first 4 episodes, but he's one of the main characters that is dealing with some stuff in the show. But yeah, thanks for sharing all of that. That was personal.
Sorry, I ended on such a bummer note. I apologize.
No, again, the theme always comes back to empathy, and it's not that like people on the right don't have empathy. I think that's a myth. I think that what happens, that's something that's really tragic about people that lean to the right, is they fall for reactionary rhetoric because they're scared. They're scared, and they're also struggling. And it's just easy. They often this reactionary rhetoric offers easy explanations, and I used to fall for it too. I fell for it a lot. People don't understand, like, and so like you know, when you get out of it. Also, what helped me become more empathetic more than anything was just becoming a parent. Talking about like when you have to take care of another human being, and he kind of forces you. And I see all these edgy, like I have a lot of viewers who are between the ages of 16 and 24, many watching right now, smarter than we ever were when they were their age, but they're also, a lot of them are edgy. They're trying to out edge each other, and all of them are going to grow out of it. So people are like, oh, kids these days, about like, I'm pretty optimistic that, you know, there's only so much edge lording you can do before it gets boring, old, and you kind of just have to grow up. And actually,
I'm
There haven't been any discourse in the chat. Go ahead.
I'm extremely glad that YouTube didn't exist in its current form when I was, well, it didn't exist at all when I was a teenager, because if it did, I would have been a Sargon fan. I know it. I just know it. I know I would
if I was
be.
younger too, I would have been too. Absolutely.
Like,
and
I was
Jordan
all about,
Peterson
like,
for sure. Oh, Jordan Peterson, I would have had his poster on my wall if I was a teenager. I'm no doubt.
Yeah. So, you know, that I think a lot of white guys sort of go through that edgy phase where they think they should still be in charge of the world, in a sense. If you
Well,
both
I
as
mean,
men and white people.
everybody wants to feel special. That's really what it comes down to. Like, and we're not. Even though there's like 1,000 people watching us right now. Thanks for watching. We're not special.
Wow, is that that many people?
Yeah,
I don't see the screen. I have the chat up, but that's it.
Yeah, no. I was gonna take questions, but man, it's actually a couple questions that were along. You already answered this kind of inadvertently, so that worked out. But it's been almost 3 hours, so I don't want to take too much more of your time.
I mean, I'm okay answering a few.
Oh, okay.
If you want, like,
I guess you're an hour behind me, aren't you? Time zone wise. All right, so Emperor Tiger Star is here. Always good to see you, buddy. Yeah, did one of these with him.
I think it would be a shame for all those people to have entered super chats and then just gotten nothing out of it.
Yeah, the problem is I can only scroll up so far, and then it like cuts them off. So.
Oh.
Is he that old? I didn't know that. Well,
yeah, now I'm tempted to look.
Thanks for the kind words there, Havoc. Appreciate that. I'm going to scroll up and try to see if I missed any questions here from earlier. I know Harrison had one. And I want to give a shout out to Casey, my mod on both here on the chat and in the Discord server.
He's 42, 43.
Oh.
Yeah. He's born in 79.
Oh, James Garfield's here. Yeah, my favorite president. He says that just jokingly. Let's see if I can find how fulfilling has teaching been for you? So would you
go to Congress? Go to Congress.
I mean, I still would argue that teaching is one of the most rewarding professions out there, despite all the crap out there. I mean, I loved it.
Yeah. I enjoyed the actual teaching, the actual being in front of a classroom and teaching.
Yeah.
I wasn't a fan of all the background stuff, the professional development, the weekends in the auditorium learning how to use Google. Like, oh my God. It's just like when I remember that, I mean, yeah, when I remember that stuff, I'm like, I'm so glad I don't have to deal with that. And I had a few angry parents when I was a teacher. But I imagine it would be so much worse now. And just, yeah.
Yeah.
It was very rewarding, very fun. I enjoyed it. But there's just so much extra that comes with it that isn't very fun.
Thank you there. Yeah, I'm scrolling up. I'm not seeing all. It doesn't let me just see the super chats here, so I might have to. Dang it! I lost the one from Harrison. It looks like. Come on, where was it?
Someone just asked a question in the chat. Would I recommend someone to join any branch of the military? And my answer to that would be, if you want to join the military, it has to be because you want to join the military, and not because you don't know what to do with your life, or you want to take a few years before you decide to go to college or something like that. If you want to join, it has to be because you want to be in the military. Otherwise, you're going to have a very miserable time. If you're there just to pay for college, if you're there, I don't know, to forgive past student loans or whatever, if you're not there for the military piece of it, don't do it.
Good advice. Well, I can't find Harrison's question. I'm sorry, Harrison. If you ask it in the comments section afterward. Oh, this guy's saying, "What do you think of Justin Amash?" He was my favorite member of Congress, but
who were you looking for? Was it Harrison?
Yeah, did he do it again?
Harrison Len?
Yes.
Okay.
Do you see it?
Yeah. Well, I think if he asked it again, he said, yeah, how did KB get out of his anti-SJW phase? And I do think I sort of answered that with the last question there. So
there it is. Thank you, Harrison. Yeah, Emperor Tiger Star wants to know, very important question, metal or punk music? Is it either or, I'm assuming?
I guess I would have to go with punk.
Yep, I would choose punk over metal too. All right. Your voice sounds great, KB. What headphones are you using?
I mean, I'm using this. Oh, you can't see it because it's out of frame. But I have a microphone over here. These are just for listening. But these are Jabra Elite 7s. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Bran, that we cut you off earlier. Thank you for the kind words, political-ish YouTubers. Would it be possible for a benevolent billionaire to out-lobby Congress? Yeah, I think about this. Like, we always, because clearly George Soros hasn't been that guy. He's been a disappointment. And so is, Bill Gates focuses on, in my opinion, I think he focuses on his kind of pet projects more than
politics. Yeah.
Mark Cuban might be the guy to actually do. He seems like, I don't know though. I'm very biased against billionaires, frankly.
Yeah.
Like, they just kind of have that warped view. The Messiah complex going on. And
I mean, when you say, would it be possible for a benevolent billionaire? It's possible right now, and none of them have done it. None of them are, benevolent. None of them want to do it. Yeah. I think something that really shifted my view on wealth inequality is I used to hate when Bernie would say, like, no, this tax would only be for the top 0.1 of the top percentage of, like, no one knows what that means. No one can really like figure out. So there are only like 700 billionaires in the world. So when they're introducing like a billionaire tax, what they should say is, this affects fewer people than graduated from your high school class. Like this affects so few people, it will never affect you. Okay, 1,500 in the world, but there's only like 700 in the US, something like that. But yeah, like if he phrased it that way, I think way more people would be on board, because when you hear the top fraction of a percent, you don't know how many people that is, and it sort of leaves the possibility of you eventually becoming one of them. But if he were to phrase it like, no, this only affects 700 people, you would absolutely be like, not me, not me ever.
Well, I think the rhetoric was effective when he said socialism for the rich, because a lot of those billionaires actually have gotten lots of government aid. They get bailed out. They don't have to pay taxes like we do. When in terms of like effective rates of taxes, I should specify. Thank you, Andrew. Very kind. Travis here. How did you initially decide to dedicate time to making YouTube videos, and how do you do your research? We kind of hit on this earlier with you. I'll just say, like with my videos, some of it straight up is just like from old lesson plans still, like my Persian Gulf war video. It's like, that's just is how I used to teach it. And then I still actually own a bunch of textbooks, and so I kind of compare them. But that's for like introductory type videos. If it's something a little bit deeper, I like to, dig deeper, read a book, or at least, or 2 or 3 if I can. I don't write it all out like you do, though. I'm totally, like, I'm big on just kind of having like 3 books open at once and then going here, here, here.
Yeah, that's how I used to do it. Yeah.
Oh, maybe I should adopt your method. Yeah.
The problem with doing it that way was that if anyone asked me a question later on, like, where did you get this? Like, that's lost to time. I don't remember which source that came from.
I finally do footnotes now in my script,
Oh.
at least. I've been good. So if you, I mean, that because I don't put it in the video, but I put it in an annotated script always that I release in the description. So I think that's important too. Like, because the problem with my videos a lot of times is like I'll change it. I'm just like, oh,
wow.
and so like,
I'm very bright now.
Well, yeah.
Am I able to share my screen with you?
Yes, you should be able to. I'll stop mine first, and then go ahead.
So in my notebook, let's see if I can find a page that illustrates this well. Give me a good page, please. Oh man, this is way before I started doing color coding.
Oh, he's getting the good stuff.
Yeah, I have to get a more recent one. So like in my notebook, let's see if you can parse that out. But like dates are written in green, proper nouns are written in blue. Anything I find from some outside source is in red. But I write everything out, notes by chapters and everything like that. And then once I'm done with my research, I come to the computer and I rewrite all of my notes. So share screen. Two monitors, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. This
one. Are you able to share it?
Yeah. I just needed to delete something that I don't want people to see. Okay. So this is my my retyped notes where I color code every source. Oh dang! Every source has a color, and then in my timeline, everything is in there unified. So, I read each book and I write out all my notes, but then when I come here, I combine everything, and that's been the biggest help of anything I've ever done, because now I can see when events are happening at the same time, even if they were in 2 different books and they don't talk about it.
Okay.
And I can see different opinions on the same event. So like the Royal Proclamation, I have 2 different sources takes on that. And while I don't do this in the script, now if anyone is like, hey, where did you get that fact about gambling? I can just come in here, search for gambling, find it, see what color it is, and say it's this source.
Oh, wow.
Period. And it's just made my life so much easier to have this. Because like I have every year, basically, something that happened every year for Indian removal anyway. And yeah, doing it like this, complete game changer. Definitely recommend if you're able to put the time into it.
I'm gonna say you put in your time. That's cool. Thank you, Jeffrey. Appreciate that. Cordova says, do you think in the age of social media, we could see a president run a successful campaign with no insider political or corporate billionaire backing?
Wow. No.
I was going to say, no. I'm a little bit cynical on this. If you would have asked me 10 years ago, I probably would have said yes. But we've seen that, how effective astroturfing is, especially like we think that like candidates are grassroots, but there's just you follow the money. Like,
yeah,
so many people that there's just a few people pulling the strings still.
Yeah. I mean, my approach to it is that most people don't use Twitter. Most people don't use Instagram. Anytime I tell someone I'm a YouTuber, the first thing they think is that I play video games. because there's just not, their kids watch YouTube. They don't watch YouTube. So I don't think anyone who tried to run a campaign on social media alone would get enough traction. They might get a few million people, but you need 50 million people in order to win. Like you're not going to reach the same kind of audience if CNN and Fox News don't put you on the air. So yeah, I find it very difficult. Or I think it would be very difficult for someone to just using social media and not having connections or access to campaign funds. I don't see that happening.
I still think it's possible, but it just seems improbable to me. I mean,
like such a daunting task. It's basically impossible.
That's why
for me.
That's why Bernie ran as a Democrat. He's like, he needed that money. Fernando has kind words to say about cooperative housing, and or no, not you. Did you do a video on? No, you didn't.
No, I'm not actually familiar with what cooperative housing is.
Okay, so. Oh, interesting. Yeah, I don't know much about it, to be honest. Seems like something worth exploring, though.
I will say I don't like living with other people. Some people just can't do it, and I'm one of those people. Yeah, I not a fan really of other people and having to share space and stuff. Like I really like having my own space that I can sort of retreat to. I'm an introvert, so I need that alone time. And in the dorms, I was never able to get that. In the Army, I was never able to get alone time really, except in the porta potties. And any veteran will know what I'm talking about there. But aside from that, there's no such thing as privacy there. So now that I'm older and I can afford it, I would choose not to live in a communal home if that's an option.
Yeah. This person here is anxious about global affairs, and I just want to say, yeah, there should be concern. I mean, particularly with what Russia has done, and I'm not too sure that China is as big a threat as people make it out to be, because they literally would be screwed without the United States. But I would say you don't need to be worried, because this has really been the state of affairs since World War II, what we're living through now. I mean, the doomsday clock, sure, it's closer to midnight, whatever, but that's just, I think it's not something to stay up worrying about. You just need to live your life, because otherwise you're going to go crazy. Sorry, I feel like I'm going to need to be a therapist here.
You just described how most veterans get through their deployment, is realizing that you have no control over it. I did convoy security while I was over there, and at least half a dozen times we learned that we drove by an IED that just didn't go off for us. They set it off for a convoy behind us. And I realized the only reason they didn't blow me up is because whoever was on the trigger saw my convoy going by and was like, nah, that's it. You can sit there and be the hardest target, scanning the horizon all you want. It really just comes down to luck. And once you you see in movies, like war movies, and I've always hated this when the soldier is like, you just have to accept that you're already dead. And that's not the case. Like, that's not what you should be doing. You should realize, though, that it really just does come down to it's just not in your control, really. So worrying about being nuked or global war, that's just not something you can control or prepare for. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen. And yeah.
That might be a good way to end this, actually. Thank you, Karate Master. But yeah, I think because it's after 11 my time, and tomorrow morning I'm actually going to be. You might be interested. I'm going to be going to a town hall. My new congressman, they just gerrymandered the district I live in, and get to meet my new congressman tomorrow morning at the local library. So I'm going to be going there. I'm going to stream it from Twitch. So I'm going to hopefully ask him a question or two about voting reforms, and that's what I got to. So that's why I need to go to bed. So
okay.
I want to thank you, KB. It's been great talking with you, and yeah, like it's been great. Just thanks for letting me bug you all these years when there was something very specific related to a YouTube problem.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. This was a much deeper conversation than I was initially expecting. So
see, that's why it's great. Like you have these questions, they really tap into stuff. It's cool. Yeah, everyone subscribe to Knowing Better, and then you'll know better.
Yes, everyone.
Everyone in the world, tell grandma to subscribe. And thank you for all watching this. And we'll catch you later.